7 p.m. It's the Charter Township of Orion Planning Commission meeting. It's our regular meeting for Wednesday, August 2nd. We're at 7 p.m. We're at the Orion Township Municipal Complex Boardroom at 2323 Joslyn Road in Lake Orion. Can I have a roll call, please?
Reynolds?
Here.
Gross?
Here.
St. Henry?
Here.
Romanowski?
Here.
Walker?
Here.
Bracken?
Here.
Injo?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Before I proceed with our regular agenda as it's been posted this evening, we do have two public hearings this evening. We are going to go a little non-conventional just to kind of keep projects moving along. We have a public hearing posted for 7:05 for PC 2022-28 GM Orion BET 2 special land use request for to expand an automotive manufacturing facility located at 4555 Giddings Road, parcel 0934200006. And 0934400011. Immediately following, we do have a joint public hearing this evening with the Board of Trustees for PC case 22-29, Baldwin Village Plan Unit Development. We will go ahead and I believe we're going to propose to move that after we deliberate on our agenda item 7A. Just since there's a number of members of the public here this evening, we want to provide adequate opportunity for everyone to speak during the public hearing. So with that said, we're going to proceed with our agenda as presented, go through a couple items, and I'll go over orders of operation for the public hearing process. With that said, we have two meeting minutes in front of us this evening from July 20th, 22, Planning Commission regular meeting minutes and public hearing meeting minutes for PC case 21-07 5-year master plan update. If the commission would like to deliberate, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move that we approve the minutes as submitted for. Thank you. Move we approve the minutes as submitted for July the 20th, 2022 for the regular Planning Commission meeting and for the public hearing minutes of the Planning Commission of the same date.
All right, I have a motion to have support.
Support.
Support by Mrs. Urbanowski. Any discussion on the motion? Any public discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please state with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. That leads us to item 4 on our agenda this evening, which is our agenda review and approval. I would propose that we approve an amended agenda for this evening as submitted, except for the joint public hearing with the Board of Trustees for PC case 2022-28 will immediately follow agenda item 7A, which is the deliberation of special land use, wetland, and site plan located at 4555 Giddings Road for PC case 22-28. That's a motion. Do I have support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Gross. Further discussion on that motion? Seeing none. Any public discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please state with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Since we have 7:03, would like to remind everyone that the public hearing process is here to provide everyone an opportunity to speak towards the projects presented here this evening. We allow everyone a 3-minute time period to take one trip up to the podium. If you could for us, since we have a few present this evening, if you could keep a couple people in line prior or just behind the person speaking at the microphone, that helps things moving along. We'd like to remind everyone that our code of hearings conduct is available on the back side of your agenda. We just ask that everyone please direct all of their comments not to the applicant, but rather myself as the chair of the commission. We will take notes and comments as described here during the public hearing process. It is not a back and forth discussion. It's rather a point to get everyone's thoughts and comments out in the process. Now, with that said, we kind of raced through the first part of our agenda. We will adjourn our regular meeting. We will officially open our public hearing at 7:05 here shortly. We'll ask the petitioner to make a brief public presentation, and then we'll allow citizens to provide their opportunity, the 3 minutes and the one trip up to the podium. At that point, we'll read any letters that we have into the record. The Planning Commission will be provided the opportunity to do the same. And then if there's any additional comments for the petitioner to add into the conversation, we will do so, and then close the public hearing. At that point in time, we'll reconvene our regular meeting, which takes us to item 7A. I'm sure many of you are here for the second item on the agenda here this evening, and that will be our second public hearing that we will open once the deliberation of item 7A is concluded. So, With that said, my talking led us to 7:05. I would like to adjourn our regular meeting and open our public hearing for, as I move all my papers here around, for the previously mentioned public hearing case, PC 22-28, GMBT Special Land Use Request to expand an automotive manufacturing facility. If the presenter is here, I will switch it over to you. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please. For the rest of you looking to speak this evening, when you do step up to the podium, if you could state your name and address for the record clearly. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up out in the lobby so we have record of who is present here tonight. With that said, I'll turn over the presenter.
Okay, thank you, Commission members. My name is Eric Smith, 2980 Wildwood Road. I'm with Wade Trim and representing General Motors here tonight to go over the special land use application for a manufacturing expansion at the General Motors Orion Assembly plant that's located on Giddings Road here in Orion Township. Current zoning is industrial complex, and GM has worked with the township already to amend the zoning to meet the current manufacturing needs. This plant expansion is going to take advantage of this existing manufacturing facility to aggressively pursue GM's vision and commitment to transition to electric vehicles. When it's in full production, the GM Orion Assembly operations will produce high-volume, full-size battery electric trucks, or BET is the acronym we use. This is going to create more than 2,300 new jobs and retain 1,000 current jobs. This plan for the expansion is consistent with the intent of the industrial complex zoning for this area in the township. This proposed use will be the same use as it currently is, with the expansion of approximately double the square foot area under the roof for automotive manufacturing. Facility is about 3 million square feet. We're going to be adding approximately 3 million square feet of additional building space. The exhibit that we got shown here tonight shows the current facility, and the darkened areas represent new building expansions that are going to occur on the south side of the plant. And just for everyone's reference, north is to the left of the sheet. So we've got Giddings Road on the west side, or the bottom side of the sheet, which is the main entrance into the current facility. So there's going to be a number of expansions off the existing plant. I'll just kind of go around and fill them with my cursor here in the northwest corner. New truck gates in this area here. There's going to be a body assembly expansion in this area. And then as we go down here, there'll be a separate building that's going to be connected by a second level conveyor system, or a paint shop, which will have the vehicle product go in a closed conveyor between the main plant and the paint shop. And then on the south side is an area for the battery cells. There's proposed new parking that's going to be on the east side of the site, behind the rail, approximately 1,000 spaces of new employee parking in the southeast corner. And then there's a temporary parking for the construction trades as they build the plant over the next 2 years. In terms of utility and public services, the existing facility has utility services in place and can support the projected loads for water, wastewater, and natural gas. Electric service is going to have a new feed that will be installed to support the expansion. That does enter the site on the east side. There's current electrical easements that we'll be working in to run new electrical service. Road access to the highways on this site is adequate to support the expansion. The existing road infrastructure is planned to be rehabilitated, but there's no major road widening except for turn lanes into the plant, and a couple of traffic signal modifications are going to be warranted. In terms of stormwater, we don't have any new discharge points planned for the site. Improvements to the on-site stormwater systems include storage and the use of bioswales for treatment of the developed areas, and additional landscaping and screening of the site perimeter will enhance the road corridor as well as meet the ordinance requirements. That's what we have for our presentation. Thank you, Commission.
Okay, thank you very much. This point in time, we'll turn it over to anyone from the public who would like to make any public comment during the public hearing portion of this project. If anyone is willing to step up and has any questions or comments, now is your time. All right, seeing no one, I will turn it over to my fellow, I'm sorry, do we have any letters in regards to this project? I don't believe we received any, thank you.
No.
And I'll turn it over to the Planning Commission for any questions or comments they have during the public hearing in this case.
I have one question. What is the timing of this project?
Any other comments before we switch back to the petitioner? Okay, go ahead.
The construction timing is going to be starting next month, or actually this month. We're planning to get permits in place to start earthwork grading, and full production is scheduled toward the end of 2024.
I'm sorry, then, what was it?
End of 2024.
All right, with that said, I believe that concludes our public hearing for PC case 2022-28, Orion BET2 plant. It is now 7:11. I would like to reconvene our regular PC meeting, which leads us to, not to be confused with the next public hearing, but that leads us to our brief public comment on our regular agenda for non-agenda items only. If anyone's here willing to or looking to make brief public comment, now is your time. Seeing no one racing up to the podium, we will continue forth. We have no items on our consent agenda, and that leads us to our new business 7A PC 2022 GM Orion BT Special Land Use Wetland and Site Plan in the previously mentioned project. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we turn over to our professional reviews as a petitioner? Okay. At this point in time, we'll turn it over to our planning consultant, Giffords Webster, for their review of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be reviewing our July 25th letter. The applicant has done a good job providing you with the introduction in terms of what is proposed, so I won't go into that. The summary items from our review include the following. There are a couple of technical pieces of information, landscape plan and photometric plan that have not yet been submitted and would need to be submitted ultimately to show conformance with township ordinances. It is our understanding that there will be internal trash containment in this situation and not the traditional external that you see in some other industrial operations, just as long as we have confirmation of that. Small administrative item, we're looking for them to add a zoning compliance table to confirm compliance with the individual setback and building height requirements for each component. I'd like to see that included on the plan. And then there's some parking lot dimension sheets that we'd like to see included as well, just to confirm we don't have any concerns. We just want to see that information. In terms of waivers, the ordinance does allow the Planning Commission to consider and grant waivers of certain ordinance provisions. One regards parking spaces, number of parking spaces on site. The site is deficient. I believe your parking standards were developed back in the day when we didn't have the same level of automation that we currently have, and there's other changes in the industry. The applicant has provided documentation of why they believe the parking should be as they are proposing it rather than what your ordinance provides for, so that would be an item for your consideration. Also, Planning Commission waiver is requested from the internal parking lot landscaping requirements. They are asking for a reduction in the loading zone requirement. They believe, based on their operation, that they can get by with a smaller amount of loading area than what the ordinance requires. And then the applicant is requesting that the safety paths within the public road right-of-way that are shown would be constructed by others as part of future road improvement projects. So that's a summary of our review.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to Mark Landis of OHM for their engineering review, and if you want to touch base on your wetland review also at this time.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll do the wetland review first. Our letter of July 27th, 2022 was our first review of the wetland submittal that was prepared in joint by Wade Trim and GHD Services. The application was reviewed and with respect to the township's wetland protection ordinance, number 107. After conducting a site review, site visit, on July 14th, we were able to generally confirm the location of the wetlands as depicted on the plans and in the wetland report provided by the applicant. In reviewing all the wetlands on site, we kind of grouped them into 4 different categories. There were 6 wetlands that were hydraulically contiguous with a river, lake, or stream, so those would be regulated under the township ordinance, section 3.A. And those are also regulated by Eagle. And there was just one wetland that was over 2 acres in size that would be township regulated per section 3.B. There were 16 wetlands that were regulated for the purposes basically of stormwater management and storage. 10 of those are also regulated by Eagle. And then there were 4 wetlands that were of higher quality that were identified in the field, 3 of which contained a moss that's typically found in bogs, 1 of which was deemed a vernal pool, which supports habitat and vegetation in seasonally flooded areas. As far as impacts, we had summarized those further down into our report. Basically, there's a little over 25 acres, including stormwater, man-made ponds on site. The applicant is proposing to impact 5.56 acres of township and Eagle-regulated wetlands, as well as an additional 4.19 acres of township-regulated wetlands, for a total of 9.76, so roughly a third of the on-site wetlands. Should be noted that of the 4 higher quality wetlands that I just spoke to, there was only one wetland, wetland L, that's just about 0.4 acres in size, that falls directly in the footprint of the battery assembly addition that's going to be impacted. So the other 3 wetlands that were deemed higher quality are not being impacted, with the exception of a minor impact to the wetland buffer for wetland T. The applicant is proposing to provide some mitigation for these impacts. Working with Eagle, they are proposing to buy into a wetland bank at a ratio of 1.5 to 1 for emergent wetlands and a ratio of 2 to 1 for forested wetlands, for a total purchase of 8.61 acres worth of wetland credits. In addition, they are proposing to relocate a stream. They're impacting 463 linear feet of a stream on the northern side of their site. They are proposing to relocate that through the coordination with Eagle onto the west side of Giddings, over in the ITC corridor, just before the existing ponds on that side of the street. And lastly, they are also proposing to mitigate some of the township-only regulated wetlands through the introduction of some additional stormwater management BMPs, the channel protection, volume control through the new township standards that promote infiltration. So those have been added to the plan. Per ordinance, the wetland application should not be approved unless the 3 conditions listed in the ordinance are met. 1, that the action or use is not likely to or will not pollute, impair, or destroy a wetland. It is our opinion that the proposed impacts to those wetlands are offset by the applicant's efforts to mitigate, as mentioned earlier in the report. Number two, that there are no feasible or prudent alternatives to the proposed action. Again, it was our opinion that the proposed land use is consistent with the zoning of the property, and the proposed impacts are consistent with typical developments to provide the required road access, utility networks, and stormwater management. And then third and lastly, the approval is consistent with public interest in light of the stated purposes of the ordinance. It was our opinion that based on the above findings, the requirements of the Wetland Protection Ordinance are being met, and that the applicant is providing the required stormwater management facilities and impacting the least amount of wetland area possible given the location of the improvements.
Thank you very
All I
much.
had on the wetlands.
Perfect.
You want me to jump into the site plan, or?
Go ahead, please.
Our site plan review of July 28th, 2022, again, was our first review. The applicant has already kind of given you a nice overview, so I'll skip that portion of our letter. Water and sewer, there's 24-inch water main on both Brown and Giddings Road, and the applicant currently has two 16-inch main connections into the site, which are both metered off at those connection points. So GM owns and maintains private, their own water main system internal to the site. Per discussion with the applicant, the anticipated peak hour demand is only 0.75 million gallons a day, which is significantly less than what the plant used when it first operated back in 1980s. So in looking at the township's hydraulic model, we have no concerns relative to the ability to service this expansion. Similarly, with the sanitary sewer, there's a 12-inch sewer up on Giddings. The applicant has, as indicated, an industrial wastewater treatment plant, so they're treating their processed water before discharging to the municipal system. There again, there's been improvements in the process which has resulted in a net decrease in the amount of water usage and therefore sewer discharge. So, previous models, we've accounted for almost 4 CFS use in that area, and they're only proposing just not even a quarter of that, 0.75 CFS. So no issues with capacity. Stormwater management, as the applicant indicated, the site kind of sits in a bowl. They have 2 large retention ponds in the northwest corner of their property. They're not proposing any additional points of discharge, and then they are actually proposing to increase the storage capacity of the entire site to meet the 100-year storm event. And then any additional new impervious area is also going to adhere to the new standards, including channel protection and infiltration. There will be quite a bit of rerouting of storm sewer. They're proposing also 2 additional new basins on site, which will all discharge through the existing site. The discharge rate will be limited from the site to what was originally designed and approved. So we shouldn't see any increase in the discharge from the site despite the doubling of size of the rooftop. They are also proposing to reroute some stormwater that's currently collected along Brown Road that discharges into their ponds on site. So in order to kind of free up some capacity in those ponds, they're actually going to reroute the stormwater to the west side of Giddings in the existing ponds over there. Which appears acceptable based on the preliminary calculations we received. Further, review is going to have to be done at engineering. So, grading, from what we've seen, appears acceptable. There are some steep slopes where they're tying into their existing property lines, but they are proposing to maintain, township maximum recommended of 1-on-3 slope. So that's fine. Traffic and circulation, they are adding 2 new approaches on Brown Road and 1 on Silver Bell. Internal site circulation appears to be sufficient for the Orion Township fire truck. We did receive a draft traffic impact study that mainly focused on the area around the site and the driveways. We understand that this study is going to be expanded over time to review intersections beyond the property. It's going to also get reviewed by the Road Commission and MDOT. But based on our initial cursory review of this, we have no concerns relative to the traffic study. There are some minor mitigation recommendations coming from the study, one of which was to put the Silver Bell and Giddings Road under traffic control, include some right-hand turn tapers, and make some minor adjustments to some traffic signal timing. Nothing significant based on what we saw. So in our opinion, the site plan as submitted is in substantial compliance with the township ordinances and engineering standards. We just ask that any approval include the following 2 conditions. One, that the applicant consolidate the site plan set to include the separately submitted survey and drainage calculations and exhibits, and exclude the partial plan sheets since the composite plans adequately convey the proposed improvements. And then number 2, that they proceed with engineering plans. That's all I had. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Large projects and a lot of moving parts. We also had reviews from other internal and external entities, as all projects do. Our fire marshal had a recommendation to approve with a number of conditions to still be worked out, or should I say requirements per the fire code to still be implemented as plans go through final engineering. We did have a public services review along with water resource commissioner review. Let's see if I missed anything else. I believe that is it. Just general overview of the project. We've known about this for a little while coming. Obviously, the 3.8 million square foot building is quite large, and they're proposing a 2.8 million square foot addition. So a lot of moving parts, and I know our staff has been actively engaged in this project from the beginning and meeting on a weekly basis to ensure the success of the project and making sure it meets our ordinance and follows through on all of those items. With that said, I'd like to open up to my fellow planning commissioners for their initial thoughts and questions for our professional consultants or the applicant themselves. Go ahead, Ms. Brecken.
So I guess my small concern would be the proposed mitigation with regards to the wetland impact and whether it's enough. Was wondering if doubling what is being offered here is an option and why it wouldn't be. In other words, the 1.5 to 1 wetland bank credit, why can't that be 3 to 1? Why can't it be 4 to 1 for the forested wetlands or 17, and then the purchase of the 17.2 worth of wetland credits? What impact would that have on?
Yeah, let's gather up a couple other comments too, and then we can circle back. Additional comments and questions? I guess if the applicant's able to answer the question posed at this point, you could step up to the podium.
So in terms of the wetland impacts, I don't have our environmental consultant here tonight, but it's my understanding that we're meeting the requirements of Eagle for that wetland replacement.
Mr. Landis, what's typically the contribution, or is that kind of a state-regulated item? Can you elaborate a little bit for us, please?
Sure. I mean, I'm in agreement with what the applicant has responded, that the proposed ratios for mitigation of 1.5 to 1 for emergence and 2 to 1 for forested is typical for Eagle. So they are working to meet Eagle's requirements for those wetlands that are mitigated by the state.
Understood. Thank you. Couple of comments I have. I thought in general, myself personally, the wetland permit, I didn't have any major issues with it. The fact that it's a special land use, this is the one and only location which, within the township in which this is zoned, so I didn't have any issue with compatibility or general thoughts. It's within the spirit and intent of the ordinance there. Obviously this is kind of a one-off use that wouldn't say is self-regulated, but obviously has some of its own moving parts. So for example, the off-street parking, the ordinance is developed kind of, as Rod mentioned, in a bigger picture ordinance to say, there'd be 6,000 parking spaces required, which, that's based on just general square footage, and that isn't always applicable, as we see in smaller cases too. Same thing goes with, internal parking lot landscaping. That's a kind of standard item that we apply to projects to make sure there's trees. This is where you're having stacking cars, so I didn't see major issue with that. Same thing goes with loading. I forget the count, but I think there'd be a crazy amount of loading bays required per our ordinance, and obviously this is not, the stereotypical project. So I was in kind of general support of the plan as submitted. There are obviously some items to work through with some of our professional consultants, and would be in support of them working through those items, specifically like site plan items with our planners and consultants to be re-reviewed as they've been doing already. That's my initial reaction. Additional thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, GM's been a long-standing employer in the township. They've been very active and responsive to providing a quality site in the community. And for one, I'm very happy to see that their commitment to not only stay in the state of Michigan, but also to stay in Orion Township. I think it's a big plus for us to see them as a major employer in our community.
Agreed. Additional comments? If not, if someone's willing to make some motions, there's a handful of motions on the table for the project, and we can further discuss and deliberate once they're on the table. Will be public comment on motions once they're present.
Mr. Chairman, I would be pleased to move that the Planning Commission approve PC 22-28 GM Orion BET 2 special land use request to expand an automotive manufacturing facility located at 4555 Giddings Road, with the subject parcels for the plan date stamped and received July the 6th, 2022. Approval is based upon the following findings of fact: that this is compatible with adjacent uses, since this is a single operation and an expansion of an existing auto manufacturing facility on the entire site. It is consistent with the master plan and the surrounding uses. Number 3, there are adequate public services within the project, with existing improvements being made which are necessary for the expansion. There will be no additional impact on traffic. The existing road network is sufficient to accommodate the expansion, and it provides easy access to I-75. There will not be any detrimental effects. This is not a smokestack type facility. It is an all internal operating facility, and will provide an enhancement of surrounding environmental uses with the expansion of the manufacturing as identified in the master plan.
All right, I have a motion to have support.
Support.
Support by Mrs. Urbanowski. Further discussion on the motion. Seeing none, at this point in time, there'll be the opportunity for public discussion on the motion. If someone's willing to make one, if you want to step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Dominic Mosheri, 3215 Silver Bell Road. I'm very excited that sustainability with their economic impact, that positive impact to the region that General Motors has committed itself even further. I just have one great concern. For over 10 years, there's a white bicycle that we saw at the south gate, and meaning that there was a pedestrian was killed at that location is what that meant. And the idea that there's no safety paths around the perimeter of the plant, I find that an odd exception. There's to the south in Auburn Hills, there's safety paths. There are also safety paths. Nothing that in the 62,000 families that we've served over the years, our family, we've never negated or asked for a safety path waiver on anything. We have Mr. Orley's, who's represented here, together with the Jacobson family, and all told, we have built thousands of miles of safety paths throughout southeastern Michigan. I think General Motors, as a responsible citizen, shouldn't just negate the necessity of a safety path around where there's going to be thousands of workers. And there's going to be picketers. It's inevitable. I have picketers at my sites. It's nothing against General Motors at all. But at the same time, it's just something to be looked into. I don't think it should hold the project up, but something that may be a consideration at a later date. That's all. But thank you very much for your commitment to the region. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That will, just as a point of reference, will be a potential future motion, so to further discuss. Further public discussion on the motion. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Urbanowski. Yes. Bracken.
Yes.
St. Henry.
Yes.
Gingell. Yes. Walker.
Yes.
Gross.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We have a few other motions that would be required for the project, if someone's willing to make one.
Chairman, I move that the Planning Commission approves the wetland permit for PC 22-28 GM Orion BET2 located at 4555 Giddings Road. This approval is based upon the following findings of fact that the action will not provide, let me restate that. It is opinion is submitted by the engineer that the proposed impacts to the wetland are offset by the applicant's efforts to mitigate the impacts. The majority of the high-quality wetlands are being preserved, and the Eagle-regulated wetlands are being banked at a rate of over 1.5 to 1 overall. 2, the proposed land use is consistent with the zoning of the property, and the proposed impacts are consistent with typical developments to provide the required road access, utility networks, and stormwater management. And 3, the requirements of the wetland protection ordinance are being met. The applicant is providing the required stormwater management facilities and impacting the least amount of wetland area possible given the location of the improvements.
A motion, do I have support?
Support.
Support by Mr. St. Henry, correct? All right, further discussion on the motion. Seeing none, public discussion on the motion. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Gross.
Yes.
Urbanowski. Yes. Bracken.
Yes.
Gingell. Yes. St. Henry.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Someone's willing to make a motion?
I'll move that the Planning Commission approve a parking calculation waiver for PC 22-28 for GM Orion BET for the subject property. The applicant has provided evidence that indicates that the standard for reasonable use of the property is insufficient because of the level of the current and future employment. And they have demonstrated that the parking facility provided will accommodate the number of employees and visitors that are expected on the site.
All right, a motion to approve an off-site parking calculation waiver. Do I have support? Support. Support by Mr. Walker. Further discussion? Seeing none, any public discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Walker?
Yes.
Gross?
Yes.
Urbanowski?
Yes.
Bracken?
Yes.
St. Henry?
Yes.
Gingell?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Motion
I
carries.
just did.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving right along, we have a couple other waivers to provide for the project. Go ahead. Mr. Gross? If you're willing?
Okay, I'll move that the Planning Commission approve an internal parking lot landscaping waiver for PC 2228 GM Orion BET for the subject property, since the applicant has provided evidence that such landscaping would not provide significant stormwater detention benefits for the site, and that there are sufficient on-site internal landscaping provided in the site plan.
All right, I have a motion to have support.
Support.
Support by Mrs. Urbanowski, an internal parking lot landscaping waiver. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, any public discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
St. Henry?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Urbanowski?
Yes.
Bracken?
Yes.
Gross?
Yes.
Gingell?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Someone like the floor to make a motion? Have it?
I'll keep going, that the Planning Commission approve a waiver from the loading and unloading requirement for Section 27.04 for PC 22-28 GM Orion BET for the subject property, since there are sufficient loading docks being provided on the site, and the applicant has demonstrated that the existing loading zones are in relationship to the building locations where they are required.
All right, motion to have support. Support by Mr. Walker for the loading and unloading requirement waiver. Further discussion? Seeing none, any public discussion on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Urbanowski?
Yes.
Gross?
Yes.
Gingell?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Bracken?
Yes.
St. Henry?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Let someone take the next one.
I also believe we, going back a little bit, we need a waiver for wetland setback too, if someone's willing to make one.
A waiver for what?
Wetland setback.
Number 3.
Okay. Move that the Planning Commission approve a wetland setback waiver for PC 2228 GM Orion BET for the subject property, based on the fact that the applicant has demonstrated the appropriateness of a lower setback in compliance with the habitat preservation, the water quality preservation, and the stormwater quality retention.
Okay, I have a motion to have support.
Support.
Support by Mrs. Urbanowski. Further discussion? Seeing none, any public discussion on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Gross?
Yes.
St. Henry.
Yes.
Urbanowski.
Yes.
Bracken.
Yes.
Gingell.
Yes.
Walker. Reynolds.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, that leads us with one additional waiver and site plan. If someone's willing to make a motion?
Relative to the safety path construction, are there proposed road improvements on the public roads that would involve the construction of the safety path? Maybe-
Go ahead, Mr. Burnett.
Maybe a little bit out, but yes, there are proposed road improvements. I'm glad you asked. I've been to at least 24 meetings in Lansing over the last couple months as part of this project and our commitment to GM. And if I can get this on the right screen, yes, as part of the project, the township is working on funding, and we've already secured almost, I apologize, everyone, I'm trying to pull this on the screen so you can see my visual. Give me 1 second, then I can focus on my technology.
It's
Oh, there it is.
showed up, it's just on this computer.
So this is the document we've been meeting with the governor's staff, with MEDC, the MDOT, and about a dozen or more senators and representatives, including the Speaker of the House, Senate Majority Leader, people from both sides of the aisle. It's a total project, which includes safety paths, $24 million project, maybe a little bit less. We think that might be high. The good news is we've already secured $12.7 million, and as most of you might know, we don't get any funding for roads as a township. The most recent funding came from Congresswoman Slotkin, a $7 million federal community project funding allocation. The state passed the budget. We have strong commitments that when they come back to work in September, the House and Senate, that in the supplemental, we will be finding the rest of these funds. We're working about 10 different angles, including some in DC. But the roads will be rebuilt in conjunction with this project, all the roads around the plant, and we will include a safety path. So that's the reason why General Motors is not including it on their project, because it's part of the project that we're working on with the Road Commission for Oakland County. There's also a federal build grant application. I won't bore you with any more details, but I'm pretty comfortable saying that the roads will be constructed, reconstructed, rebuilt, not just resurfaced, including safety paths as part of the Township and Road Commission project that we're working on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett.
Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
With that, I would move that the Planning Commission approve a waiver from the requirement to construct safety path for PC 2228 GM Orion VET located at the subject site, because the township has been working diligently with the various funding agencies to provide for road improvements surrounding the site, which will include the construction of safety paths as a part of that construction.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Walker. Further discussion on the motion?
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. St. Henry.
Mr. Barnett, can you tell me, like, what the general timing is of the road rebuild of the roads?
So we've been working with the Road Commission, and it's going to be a symphony of effort. I mean, it wasn't really talked much about today, but we're anticipating upwards of 2,000 to 4,000 tradesmen and women throughout the course of the project working on site. And and the plant is still operational. I was there last week. They're still building bolts and bolt EUVs. They're going to continue building those products throughout the construction. So we have to make sure when we do start the project that we can continue to let the plant operate, but there's also lots of other businesses that use those roads. We are hopeful that we can do some of the project next year and the rest of the project in 2024. It'll probably go over 2 years because we want to really coordinate and make sure we're not stifling the productivity of the construction as well as the plant. So we are in we actually meet with this group every single Tuesday, and we have been for the last couple months. We will for the next 2 years. They are extremely organized and on top of things, and we've been meeting with the road commission regular as well as starting the plan of that. So this is the big one. This is going to take, I mean, again, to put it in perspective, we've never seen a project like this in southeast Michigan, let alone Oakland County, let alone Orion Township. So we're hopeful to start some of the project next year on the road reconstruction, and it will probably go into 2024 because we can't totally close all those roads.
Go ahead, Donnie.
I appreciate Mr. Mosherry's comments about the path, because I am on the path committee, but if in the event you're not able to find funding, would it be something that GM would consider revisiting down the line?
I mean, I don't know that anyone in this room can speak for GM because they're consultants, but I would just tell you that we have a very great relationship with General Motors and their team, and we will continue to work with them. I'm confident we're going to be able to get it done, so. Yep.
Further comments from the Planning Commission? Questions? Public comments on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Walker.
Yes.
Bracken.
Yes.
St. Henry.
Yes.
Gross.
Yes.
Urbanowski.
Yes.
Gingell.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. That leads us to our site plan approval or denial for the project. If someone's willing to make the motion.
Chair,
Yes, sir, Mr. Walker.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go for it.
I move that the Planning Commission grant the site plan approval for PC 2228 GM Orion BET 2 site plan located at 4555 Giddings Road, parcel 093420000006 and 0934400011. The plan's date stamped received July 6, 2022, based on the following findings of fact. As has mentioned earlier, this is a project unknown to Orion Township or anywhere. And I think it's important that this move forward as quickly as possible. The applicant has indicated that they would cooperate with the consultants on their reviews for anything that has not been addressed completely. So this approval is based upon the following conditions: that the applicant will amend the plans to address any unresolved issues from the township's engineer, planner, and fire department reviews, and resubmit for re-review by the consultants to their satisfaction, with no required return to the Planning Commission unless the applicant is unable to meet one of the consultants' issues.
Okay, I have a motion on the table. Do I have support?
Support.
Support by Mrs. Gingell. Further discussion? Seeing none, any public discussion on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
St. Henry.
Yes.
Urbanowski.
Yes.
Bracken.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Gross.
Yes.
Gingell.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Excuse me, yes.
Motion carries.
Didn't need all that suspense. All right, that concludes item 7A on our agenda this evening, and as promised, we are going to move into our joint public hearing with the Board of Trustees for PC Case 22-29, Baldwin Village Plan Unit Development, Concept and Eligibility Plan located at 4410, 4408 South Baldwin Road, parcel 0932301001, unaddressed parcel 0932301014, located at the northwest corner of Morgan and South Baldwin Roads, and unaddressed parcel 0932151020, located on north of 4408 South Baldwin Road, and 4292 South Baldwin Road, parcel 0932151021. The applicant, Red Equities LLC, is proposing to rezone the properties from single-family residential R1, suburban farms, and Brown Road Innovation Zone, or also known as BIZ, to a plan unit development to construct a mixed-use development containing both residential and commercial components on approximately 67 acres. Mouthful. Okay, with that said, Now that we have 7:54, I would like to adjourn our regular meeting. Keep in mind that we'll reconvene that meeting after this public hearing, and at this point in time, I'll turn it over to the Board of Trustees to open their portion of this process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to call the special joint meeting of the Township Board of Trustees to order at 7:54. And note for the roll that we have Treasurer Steele, Trustee Flood, Trustee Dalrymple, Trustee Urbanowski, and myself, Chris Barnett, present. We do have 5 members present. Clerk Schultz and Trustee Bernie are absent with notice, and we do have a quorum. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point in time, I now have 7:55, and I would like to open the public hearing for the previously mentioned project. With that said, if the applicant would like to step up to the podium to make a brief presentation. Again, we're during the public hearing portion of this process. We'd like to remind everyone that the code of conduct for public hearings is located on the back side of your agenda that you picked up. If you have not done so already, please sign in with your name and address out in the lobby before you take off. And if you are willing to or looking to make a public comment, please keep your comments to 3 minutes and 1 trip to the podium. And if you could, just to kind of keep the conversation moving along for us this evening and give everyone the opportunity to speak, if you could just have a small line behind the podium, that would be greatly appreciated. Once everyone in the room has made comment, we will turn it over to read some citizen letters that we have, and then the Planning Commission, the Board of Trustees, and then a brief cap from the petitioner, and then we'll move forward with our regular agenda. With that said, I'll turn it over to the petitioner. If you would like to state your name and address for the record, please, and give us a brief overview of the project.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jim Epping. I'm a land planner and landscape architect. Our offices are at 9336 Sashabaw Road in Clarkston, just around the corner. I am here tonight. Certainly appreciate the time and the effort to pull together a joint meeting. I know people's times are busy, and just going through an election, certainly your schedules are full. I'm representing tonight a pretty dynamic team, and I'd like to just go through some of those key players. With us tonight from Red Equities is Randy Orley, principal with Red Equities, and watching remotely and participating remotely is Buzz Silverman, the other principal at Red Equities. Also with me tonight is Dominic Mosheri, who is leading the Mosheri-Jacobson partnership on this project for the residential portion. We also have Gabe Shookman and his team from Allrig USA leading the commercial. With us tonight, we've got a whole galley of people here, but our engineers from both Steve Pangori from AEW, Mitch Harvey from Stonefield, Manny Kashevsky from SR Jacobson's, and the list goes on. So I think what I mean by that is, again, thank you for your time. We've brought our experts. We've got a team that's both locally based with, just a tremendous amount of national experience. And I think right from the very beginning that demonstrates our commitment, our excitement, how proud we are about this project that we're beginning to bring to you tonight. It is a long process, and I heard your request to be brief, and so I can't promise brief, but I'll promise fast. I will move through this quickly and stop for questions as you have those. This is a complex problem or project, problem I suppose to a certain extent, and we'll get into that. What we're asking for tonight, though, is a consideration for a recommendation to the board for PUD criteria eligibility. We are requesting to develop this project as a PUD, and within that, certainly your ordinance prescribes a number of steps. The first step is why we're here tonight, to have a joint meeting and then request that the Planning Commission consider this request and meets the finding that this project, in fact, does meet the eligibility for a PUD. I wish it was that simple. You have a series of ordinances that apply to this parcel. We've spent an awful lot of time going through that, working with your planners, your engineers, your staff, your subcommittees, and so forth. What I'd like to do in the first half, before we even get to the plan, is really walk through some of the ordinances as we see them applying to this project. because it does get complex. I think it's important, A, to validate that we're looking at it correctly, to kind of put on the public record our commitment to work with the staff and with your teams here at the township to get through these various ordinances, and then to ideally help provide information to the residents, the citizens of Orion Township and surrounding communities. So, as I mentioned, we'll look at the property in a minute, but what we're asking for, again, is to be developed a piece of property as a mixed-use project under a PUD. Because of its location, it also has an overlay district besides the underlying zoning of the Untitled Village Center overlay standards. And so those are layered onto here. We also have your township master plan. And so there's components specific to this property in this district that we want to look at within the master plan. And then, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, a portion of the property is also in the Brown Road industrial zone, or the biz district. And so there's this kind of this confluence of ordinance requirements, statutes, standards, right down to setbacks and everything else that we've tried to carefully balance. And so you received a package in your packet tonight that is probably more extensive than typically you'd get at a conceptual PUD. But what Dominic and Buzz and Randy and Gabe have asked us to do is do our homework right from the beginning, so that when we do get to this point tonight, that we're confident that not only is this going to be a world-class project, not only is it going to be fantastic for Orion Township and for its residents, but it's done right, and it's done according to your ordinance, your master plan vision, and so forth. Here's my little equation, and what we've tried to do tonight is go through and check the boxes, but we talked about the various ordinance components. We'll get into the design and the layout, the architecture, the actual uses, the amenities that we're proposing. I think it's important that we talk tonight about the livability of this project, not only for its residents and its users, but we've got adjacent residents, many of whom are here tonight, who we're concerned with. We want to make sure that we're good neighbors, and we'll continue to do that. So we're looking at not only the livability within the project, but the livability as people go up and down Baldwin, and certainly as they live off of Morgan Road and off of Pepper Mill and the Gregory Cottages and so forth. There's a lot of technical components, some of which we'll touch on tonight, many of which come further in the process. This is, as we know, a multi-step process, and we'll ultimately, we've done an awful lot of homework working with your staff and your consultants on infrastructure, on systems. We'll get into that, but a lot of that is in the path ahead as well. What Dominic asked me to double down on tonight is our commitment, our long-term commitment to not only getting this plan right, but to owning and operating this project for generations to come, to making sure that it remains, it is at the beginning and remains years from now as just a best-in-class neighborhood within Oakland Township. We're continuing to hear is Orion Township. I'm reading Oakland. Thank you. Orion Township. We're hearing as people are seeing this beyond Orion Township that it's already beginning to be called Oakland County's best new neighborhood, and so we're proud of that. Right from the beginning, and I'm happy to go through these in detail. I'll touch on them and we'll come back as you have questions. But again, our primary purpose tonight is to consider the eligibility of this project under your PUD ordinance. Your PUD ordinance provides 6 points that qualify it as a PUD. And so we've gone through these point by point in your ordinance, and in my opinion, and we're starting to hear that feedback. We'll hear from your various consultants and staff tonight, but that in fact this project does, in my opinion, qualify as a PUD under the 6 criteria. There's a recognizable and sustainable benefit to the residents of this project, and probably more importantly to the overall township. We'll go through those details throughout this presentation, but preservation of natural features. Beautiful natural features on this site that we're preserving. Participation in access management and storm management and the connectivity of pathways, high-quality architecture, provisions for transitional uses between existing residents and the busier Baldwin Road and Brown Road area. as well as economic impacts to the benefits to the township. And so that's one of the criteria. Density impact, we'll go through in a little bit how we calculated our density, but we looked at, again, kind of this spider web of ordinances, the underlying zoning, the PUD ordinance, the Gingiville ordinance. They all talk about density in slightly different ways. What we're convinced is that this project is, from an ordinance point of view, from a density point of view, probably underbuilt. One of your ordinances that we'll go through, which I think is most applicable, is the Gingiville ordinance, which anticipates in some areas density as much as 20 units per acre. We're less than half of that with our proposal. We're at 9.75. We'll go through the math on that tonight. The township master plan we'll touch on, but one of the criteria of the master plan, or of the PUD eligibility, is it compliant or in line with the vision of the master plan? And again, we feel very much that it is. You guys just went through a big exercise of your new master plan. Talked a lot about creating 15-minute neighborhoods that preserve open space, but at the same time promote community and promote flexibility. We've got some other points in the master plan that we'll talk about in a second, but again, that meets the criteria. Economic impact, guaranteed open space, and unified control. Again, these are the balance of the 6 tests within the PUD ordinance. We do have exceed the required guaranteed open space. The ordinance requires 15% in residential, 10% in commercial. We've got a balance of 20% overall, plus some additional open space in terms of the natural features. Unified control. We've worked hard, both with Mr. Adler and the underlying landowners. Dominic, Randy, Gabe, and Buzz have put together this team for the immediate development, and then the construction, and then the ownership of this development. So it's individual ownerships, all principals, all here throughout the process. That was the PUD. Now the Gingiville Village Center also has some criteria to go through. It's a little more simple. Mixed-use village concept directs that this should be a mixed-use residential neighborhood. Actually encourages within that ordinance to use the PUD ordinance. So the Gingiville suggests or really directs that the Gingiville properties be developed under a planned unit development. Provide style, lifestyle, architecture appropriate for the township and appropriate for this development. We'll go through our architecture and why it really is setting a new standard for the county and for the community. Encourage vehicular and interconnection of pedestrians. So it's not just about the cars. We've got the beautiful Baldwin Road development, but it's equally, or maybe again, more importantly, for pedestrian connectivity. And so we'll show a network of sidewalks and paths and trails, not only through Baldwin Village, but connecting to adjacent neighborhoods as well. And then to recognize, the Gingiville ordinance talks about recognizing the current community and lifestyle issues. So what is vital to Orion Township, what's vital to this immediate area, and then where do we want to take the community or continue to evolve the community in terms of establishing world-class lifestyles. I won't go through every detail of this. Early on the process, again, Dominic, Buzz, Randy, just kept doubling down and saying, are you sure? Are you sure we're interpreting these ordinances? So we literally took the Gingiville ordinance and went point by point, and we included this in your packet with our understanding of what each of those points are and if we meet it and how we meet it. I'm happy to say that about 90% of them we feel as though we exceed the Gingiville ordinance. There are a few items in here that we want to talk about in terms of the size of just one of our uses, slightly bigger than the Gingiville overlay would allow. But again, you guys had some foresight, both your PUD ordinance and your Gingiville grants flexibility within your planning commission and within the board to grant those deviations or waivers. So that's in your packet. But again, I'm happy to say that most of these, hard to read, say meet or exceed, and we do feel strongly about that. One of the last documents that we've spent an awful lot of time on is not only your old, because when we started this project, you still had your old master plan, but now your new master plan. Master plan essentially is about a vision and about goals. And again, it's creating your tagline of we're living as a vacation. I extended that to say it's also about the lifestyle. And so how are we contributing to the lifestyle of Orion Township? The master plan wants to avoid leapfrog development, wants to bring innovation really to your boards and your commissions in terms of flexible approaches. How do we get things done a little differently than we used to do? Prevent overcrowding. Again, we're at half the density. Protect natural features, critical, I think, to everybody and certainly to us. High-quality, diverse housing. We'll talk a minute about some of the surveys that you've conducted in your master plan. Community character, and then fostering creativity. At the end of the day, we're in the same business that you are, is creating vibrant places. And we think that, again, because of the size and scale of this development, it will do just that to add to the vibrancy of Orion Township. Your master plan did an awful lot of work. I know Rod and really the whole team here went through and did a lot of forecasting. Some points that were interesting to us were the survey results that talked about 50% of the residents actually plan to move to smaller homes and to different types of homes. We're seeing that in Troy, we're seeing that in Clarkston, we're seeing that everywhere as our populations age. But a lot of our communities haven't kept up with those other types of housing choices. And so Baldwin Village has looked carefully at that and is offering some different types of alternative housing choices for our current residents, for the 2,300 new GM employees that are coming here, as well as people that are just frankly attracted to Orion Township and want to live here. That missing middle, we think we've accomplished that. And then the graphic on the right talks about all these different housing types. Not the 4-bedroom colonials anymore, but what else is possible that doesn't, in a sense, disrespect that lifestyle, but complements it, allows people to move in and move up or move out and move across, move to different areas without having to leave the township. So again, we're providing those different types of housing choices. We're providing that walkability. Another survey question that we feel we hit is 50%, or the number one survey response in terms of commercial was unique and different groceries, and so we're happy to do that. What it all amounts to is that 15-minute neighborhood. This truly is a 15-minute neighborhood. If I can't walk within 15 minutes, I certainly can drive within 5 or 8 or 10 minutes, get really everything I want, get to school, get to work, get to shopping, get to my friend's house, get to my church. And so because of its location, because of its flexibility and diversity, we think that this really will be, as your next developments come to town, say, that's what we mean by a 15-minute neighborhood, Baldwin Village. I'm almost to the plan. Again, homework was important. We did over 60 iterations of this plan, subtle changes, big changes, important changes. Every single one of them was based on feedback on 4 pre-application meetings, countless meetings with staff, working with homeowners and residents and market studies and everything else. So we continued to evolve it. We got out and walked the site, learned the site, understood the trees, understood the beautiful wetland in the middle, and made major changes to the site plan from those early iterations to the site plan that we're presenting to you tonight. Open space, circulation, again, how do we get more? How do we not meet the ordinance? How do we exceed the ordinance? In terms of location, just so that we're clear, we're looking at about 63 acres of land on the west side of Baldwin Road, just north of Morgan. It is a hilly site. I'll go into the next slide. It's 63 acres. We now have kind of an unusual right-of-way path down our eastern border with Baldwin and the recent expansion of Baldwin Road. We've got about a half a mile of frontage on Baldwin Road, and so we've got an opportunity to really be a gateway to the community, to be important as it relates to the aesthetics in terms of the architecture. I mentioned we have 50-foot of grade change. We've got natural buffers on the site, which we've worked hard to maintain those natural buffers, not only for the benefit of our future residents, but certainly for the benefit and care of the existing and adjacent neighborhoods. We're proposing 4 points of access on Baldwin Road. We've already started and had multiple meetings with the OHM, with the Road Commission of Oakland County, understanding really what is permitted, how do we achieve a safe and viable neighborhood. Interestingly, the traffic study that's well underway now is less about creating volume. Almost every neighborhood says how many new cars you're going to put in the area. Baldwin Road works really, really well, right? What we're more concerned about in our traffic study are the finer details, how people are moving, how they're handling these crossovers. And so you'll see that in future meetings, the actual final traffic study and the feedback from your consultants and from the state and the county. Parallel plan was submitted to the township, and that is really in part, I guess, to determine density. I originally put a big note on the plan, hey, I don't think we need a parallel plan because we're so far below what is permitted for this site, but it is good planning. I think it's an important document to provide to the township and provide to the community. And again, it started to look at all those various underlying zoning, biz, Gingiville, everything else, PUD ordinance, all put together. A lot of parallel plans are kind of open to interpretation, right? And so this is our interpretation of it. Boy, if we really put the pedal to the metal and we really took advantage of every little nuance of the Gingiville overlay and we really maximized the PUD ordinance, what could be accomplished? And so we looked at how would 20 units per acre fit on this site? How would we still accomplish commercial, both in the biz district and in the Gingiville district? How do we provide circulation and open space and still preserve the wetland? And we were able to demonstrate that we can provide a total of 672 residential units in a mixed family district. There's talk within the overlay district about single family, and we can get into our interpretation of that tonight. But I think it's really realistic to say that nearly 700 units plus about 115,000 square feet of commercial could comfortably fit on this site. We can still preserve the wetlands. We can still provide the open space. We can still provide the stormwater mitigation and so forth. And so it's not a great plan. It's not a pretty plan. But I think it's a good litmus test that you guys will use in your determinations, that the staff consultants will use in their determinations of what is available to this site. It's always interesting when we look at new land is it's a temptation to compare what is proposed versus the open space that's there now. But really what the ordinance, of course, looks like is what is proposed versus what is the underlying rights of that land. And so that's what this plan does. The takeaway is our density is about 31% lower than what we think would be able to be placed on this site. And our commercial is almost 40%, 39% lower than the commercial that could be generated on this site. Think about that. It's not only those uses, but it's the traffic, it's the parking, it's the cars, it's the pollution, it's the exhaust. So all in all, we've provided what we think is a very, very green development. We're at the plan. The master plan provides, as I say, an awful lot of green space. Really what we've done here, and there's a lot of data on the plan, we're happy to go through that in detail, but on a big picture, really what we're trying to do is create a neighborhood within a neighborhood, or neighborhoods within a neighborhood. We're proposing 4 different villages. I actually brought and should have been using this whole time. Pointer. 4 different villages in the plan. What we're calling Uptown Village here at the northwest, North Village to the back along the cottages of Gregory, South Village here, which is up against abuts the Peppermill neighborhood, and then the commercial or the plaza at Baldwin Village, which really is along Baldwin Road as you would expect. It's up against the church here, which was the corner was formerly their land. I should also say, now that I've got my pointer out, that this line here is about the demarcation between the Biz District and the rest of the Gingiville Overlay District. What our plan was able to do in addition to creating these villages is we've maintained about 2.5 acres of beautiful, beautiful wetland, a very natural buffer here, as well as buffers to the back of the residential neighborhoods here. we've created regional stormwater management. And so rather than having a lot of underground, a lot of ponds, we do take care of just this very south end of the commercial is Mitch and his team are engineering that, and that little bit towards the south end is going to go into its own system. But really the balance of the site flows from the west to the east, flows from Peppermill to Baldwin, and so all that water is coming across the site, of course, being captured, being retained, being engineered, goes out into what will be about a 2.5-acre pond, beautiful pond right along Baldwin Road. So as people are coming south on Baldwin or going north on Baldwin, there'll be, you know, that's going to have fountains. It's going to be a real iconic feature. We have pocket parks, we have trail systems. We've connected not only our trails through the woods, our sidewalks, but even made allowances to connect up to Gregory so that these neighborhoods here could certainly walk down and either, you know, walk, just power walk through our neighborhood or into the commercial, more importantly. I think I mentioned that we're 20% open space. I'll go now through the 4 components and going to do that mostly with pictures. I'll talk less and let the pictures talk more. Really, as it relates to the plaza, and I'll go in kind of opposite order as I just mentioned, the commercial component, or what we're calling the plaza at Baldwin Village, this is obviously important both for its uses, and they're more geared towards residents of Orion Township and surrounding communities, as opposed to some of the big box that you see on Brown Road, which is bringing people from further distances. So these are neighborhood services, restaurants, retail, and so forth. But what it also is a really cool opportunity to create a streetscape along Baldwin Road and along the entranceway. I think I failed to mention Dominic Tringali, probably the best architect in the state, is on our team here. And Dominic worked together, he and I worked together and created what we'll see in a minute is called architectural landscape. And so we've created iconic structures, images, landscape that's going to dress up's not a fair word, but really beautify and make iconic Baldwin Road and make our entranceway. So as we look down Baldwin Road, this is the entrance. We've got a number of photographs of it, but this is looking into the site, into our main, just opposite of Judah Road, and Baldwin would be going down to the right here. So this is right at that main entrance, right at the roundabout at Judah Road. Big water features, towers, architecture, really, really full landscape with the Uptown Village, the multifamily village to my right, the commercial, which we'll see in a second, to my left, and landscape, uniform landscape on both sides. Beautiful tower, Baldwin Village. You can imagine this lit at night. You can imagine it decorated during the holiday season. The landscaping, awful lot of developers will say, hey, it's a bit much landscape. Dominic kept saying, hey, can we add more trees? Can we do, a better job here to really make this beautiful? And so our commitment is to do that. As we look to the south here, you'll start to see the commercial in the background with the residential and the towers in the foreground. What Dominic Tringali has done is created this really beautiful trellis system. And so these aren't going to be backyard trellises, but these are more architectural, structural trellises that highlight the entranceway. They'll be lit, they'll have vines, they'll be landscape. But they also really demarcate special areas both in the commercial and throughout the residential. Entrances to pathways, entrances to the North Village or the South Village. And so there's these unified characteristics that we've used throughout. A little higher view, looking at the commercial, that's the white buildings in the background. That would be the Baldwin Square, I think it is called, with PetSmart and Kohl's and all those down there. But our development is really right up against the road. I say that our buildings are actually about 90 or 91 feet back from the road, but certainly our effort is to highlight the public spaces, highlight the sidewalk, and hide the parking in the back, again, in tune with your master plan. And so it's going to be a more walkable impression and frankly, a more walkable village. Looking down Baldwin Road, this is our grocer on the corner with the residential and the main entranceway just to the side. So this is looking north on Baldwin with our grocer. We're in serious discussions with a grocer. We're not able to really talk publicly who that is yet, but I think we're really excited to get to that point where we can introduce them. We know that it's a dynamic use. We know that it meets your goal of the #1 survey response of a unique grocer. What's also neat is over the years, people have proposed a super Walmart on this site or a super Kroger on this site. Those can be 150, 200,000 square feet. This is proposed to be 45,000 square feet. So about half or even a third of the size of even a standard Kroger. So really a neighborhood market, a neighborhood grocer with an exciting concept. This is the one area that ultimately we'll get to when we talk about waivers. Your Gingiville ordinance does say that the largest building on this site should be 13,000 square feet. This is 45,000. So this is one of those waivers that we'd be asking for within your discretion. All of our other buildings are below that 13,000 square foot area. As we move further south, we're showing two different mixed-use retail buildings, and I think the nice part about these are the spaces that we create outside. So this is along Baldwin Road. Again, one of Dominic's trellises. We're picking up all the Gingiville design style guidelines in terms of pillars and fencing and landscaping. But what this really will become is an outdoor plaza area. We're envisioning walkability, fireplaces, ability to have outdoor art, whatever, anything that those retailers and even, frankly, the community wants to do there. These are going to be big outdoor spaces so that people are going to be able to, have outdoor dining, outdoor patios right up against Baldwin Road as opposed to hidden in the back. Here's a view from the back where we've got our parking, but what's important that these are two-sided buildings, that we're able to walk between the buildings, and that we're able to create those outdoor spaces. Here's a connection, again, with one of Dominic's trellises and that really beautiful landscape. And this is leading from the South Village so that people from the cottages of Gregory, people throughout our three villages can all walk to these areas safely, walk back and forth, even go further down Brown Road to some of the other uses. An area of what those plazas in the middle may look like, the fire pit and the frontage along Baldwin. As we move further south, we do have, I don't know that I have a picture of it here, we are proposing a car wash between those retail buildings and our restaurant on the corner. The car wash is very deliberately set further back from Baldwin Road so that it doesn't interrupt those plazas that we just looked at. It'll be well landscaped and really, I think, again, be one of those community uses. Even though there's a new car wash probably 1.5 miles from here, because of traffic, because of everything else, they really are in two different trade areas. And so we're going to be able to service that to work traffic going up and down towards 75 and really, I don't think, have any impact whatsoever on that other new one down on Brown Road. We are able to talk tonight about Chick-fil-A. Gabe and his team at Allrig are very excited, as certainly my twin boys are, to talk about Chick-fil-A coming to town. Apparently it's less about the chicken and more about their ice. They have this pebbled ice that people are very excited about. So we are proposing Chick-fil-A down on the southernmost corner. We all know that Chick-fil-A generates a lot of excitement. It also generates foot traffic, car traffic, and pickup traffic. And so Mitch, from Stonefield Engineering, Mitch Harvey and his team working with Gabe, we're all hyper-focused on making sure that this works, and we know that the plans that we've presented today do work. We've got stacking for that opening day, and of course that real crazy traffic is just that opening weekend, and then it kind of normalizes. But we're going to be able to accommodate opening day, Christmas week, all those other things, both from a stacking point of view, but more importantly, not interrupting the traffic on Baldwin. So we're not going to have people stacking up. Everybody comes within the site, free movement coming in and out. So paramount importance that we don't create any delays on Baldwin as people approach the site. I'm going fast as I can. Uptown Village. This is our multifamily development. What we're proposing here, and again, this is through the development and building and then ownership of Dominic Mosheri and S.R. Jacobson's companies working together. They've done this in many locations, both in Orion Township and elsewhere, and it really is just a beautiful development. We're proposing 304 residential units within this. And really what this is that's one of those missing middles. These are luxury for lease residences. We can get into, Dominic can provide more detail in terms of cost and qualification and everything else like this, but these are, sadly, from my point of view, much more expensive than my mortgage. You know, these are going to be great development from a community point of view. These are those homes that people can stay within Orion Township, leave their 4-bedroom colonial, and come to either this or some of our homes that we're proposing. I'm sorry, I skipped a little past that. Again, the architecture is really updated, very, very cool, we think. Sleek, modern, but still fits very well into the neighborhood, into Orion Township and along Baldwin Road. Many of our colors you'll see throughout each of the developments are muted, especially as we move further west, further towards the existing neighborhoods. The colors get more and more muted as they sit in amongst the trees so that we have less and less impact on our agenda. Uptown Village will be a full amenity type neighborhood, and so this will be a clubhouse, big gathering areas, opportunities indoor and outdoor for parties or showers or those type of things, as well as a pool. Now the pool and the clubhouse will be available to all 3 villages, and so if you're a resident here, it's located in Uptown Village overlooking that 2.5-acre pond, but it's available to all of our residents. And that's looking north as we look at the entrance to Uptown Village out to Baldwin Road and Judah, roundabout there. The north and south villages, I'll go through these together. They're similar, but they're different in the sense of some of their architecture is different, their site layout is different, the connectivity, the sidewalks, the buffers to the neighbors are all consistent and all very, very important. On the north, we're proposing 79 attached single-family townhomes. So there'll be townhomes throughout this darker brown area, 79 residences altogether. On the south side, we've got actually three different building types, 2 significant differences, and then one really in terms of garages and driveways and architecture. In total, we're proposing 82 residences on the south village, so 79 at the top, on the north, 82 on the south, 161 total between north and south villages. I'll show the architecture in just a minute, but what we've tried to do is there's quite a bit of elevation here. And so these buildings, although they're set back quite a distance from the new cottages at Gregory, will be hidden because of the elevation. We sit substantially lower down that hill. And so that these residences, beautiful from all sides, but will be more hidden. We're maintaining that existing buffer. We're putting significant new evergreen landscaping throughout. Over on this side, we're more at grade with the adjacent Peppermill neighborhood. We're slightly sloping down, and as I said, sloping down all the way to Baldwin. But we wanted to be, cognizant of the neighbors that have been here for some time. So what we've done here is we've actually increased the setback distance. We're on average about 125 foot from their home. So if I take an average measurement of the back of their home, an average measurement of the back of our homes, we're about 125 foot. About 75 foot of that is on our property. So our buildings are set back anywhere. Our closest right up here are at that 53, 54 foot setback from the property. And then obviously we drop off and get quite a bit further back. The great part about what Dominic has designed here is these are single-story ranch duets or duplexes. And so the profile will be lower, not as tall of a home as what the adjacent neighbors are, so they're not looking at a big multi-story townhouse or anything like that. It's very much residential in scale and character. These are the attached townhomes from the North Village. really great buildings, great character and great architecture. Very deliberately have gone with this, and I could ask Dominic Nicali to give me better words, but this more contemporary yet traditional, kind of a Michigan farmhouse. I'm sorry?
Scandinavian.
Scandinavian, yeah. Type architecture as opposed to kind of that Royal Oak. We definitely wanted to get away from any type of Royal Oak brick townhome. And so this architecture, I think, goes well with Orion Township, goes well with our community, but really blends in well to the development and to the buffers at the western edge. Here's a look with the garage units. We'll have units both with front-loaded garages and then many units you'll see on your site plan have side-loaded garages on the end. And so we tried to work closely with your ordinance in terms of the garage's position, how many can we get to be side-loaded. I think just about 50%, a little less than 50% of our townhome buildings have side-loaded garages on their end units. Some of the different types of housing. We'll ultimately, obviously, through this process, submit full architectural plans, materials, all those different things. But we thought it was important, even at this eligibility criteria, to give a full understanding of what the intent is. Here's a look at that duet unit or that two-family unit. This is an attached single-family home, a duplex, if you will, residential in scale, single-story. May have a bonus room or an office upstairs.
It will not.
It will not.
That's just relevation.
Okay, perfect.
Not in the back corner.
Perfect, thank you. So single-story living, two families. We have 16 of these units all along that southwest corner. I'm actually getting close. Infrastructure, again, this all comes through final. But it's important to make sure we've got it right now. We've done plans now with this team, but with less experienced teams over the years that say, yeah, let's just do that. And then we get to engineering, we say, holy cow, we can't do what we promised. And so Steve Pangori, Mitch Harvey, OHM, your teams here, we've done just exhaustive studies on stormwater, on sanitary, on water. We talked about the traffic study. Tree surveys are underway. Wetland reports and wetland studies have been submitted. We're committed to that continued coordination. It really has to work well, not only for Baldwin Village, but for Orion Township. And we know that given the homework that we've done, the site surveying and the work with all the various consultants at play, right up to the state level, that we can confidently say this is going to work and it's going to work well. PUD has one more test, and I won't read through each of these, but it's always about a public benefit as well. What is the public benefit? And some of these can be very specific things like 20% open space, preservation of wetlands, the more intangible things like the addition and the beautification of Baldwin Road and the entranceway, safety path connections, sidewalk connections, trails, and so forth. What Buzz and Randy and the team said is there more that we can do for the community? And so we've made the commitment, we've put it as part of this package, is that we're also plan on working with the Orion Township safety path. We've already got the benefit that Baldwin Road put a safety path in front of this property, this half-a-mile property. And so Buzz and Randy said, well, let's work with the safety path, make a contribution to the safety path, because we know there's other areas in the township that need that connectivity. We're also looking at and working with and have made the commitment to participate in this idea of an accessible kayak launch at the camp up on
Clarkston
Road, right in the S-turns there, Clarkston. So that's a really great use. We've studied the proposals for that. We've made that commitment in writing. We'll continue to work with the township and understand how that happens, that we can help participate in that. I won't repeat these, but I wanted to come back to them just as knowing that I'd be long-winded tonight. Thank you for your time, but again, just reiterate that our objective tonight, at least my objective, you tell me yours, is to help broadcast our belief that we meet the eligibility as a PUD, both under all the various ordinances that we talked about, Gingiville and PUD and underlying and BIZ and everything else, that we took seriously your master plan. We think that this is going to be that benchmark that we add up and that we really, truly will be not only the best new neighborhood in Oakland County, but certainly the best new neighborhood in Orion Township. So with that, I will stop talking. Dominic, if I missed anything?
Thank you, Jim. As you saw, the many iterations, and Buzz and Randy and Jim have been working on this for nearly half a decade. They brought me in about 18 months ago, Scott Jacobson. Hey, we have 750 units for you. Hey, go look at it, and with the iteration, brought it down to 530. And then the real planning started, and really deep diving the ordinances, and listening to the comments of the consultants and other stakeholders in the community, including the neighbors, and bringing it down to a level where we don't have a point of diminishing returns and not competing with ourselves, but having the open space and having these unique dynamic neighborhoods that interconnect to each other with the common open space and clubhouse. And we believe we've found the right formula in that mid-474, is that correct? 465, thank you. There we go, you just took 10 more units away from me. But this is true process that we went through. Nearly sausage making, but at the end, it's come out beautiful, and we're very proud, and we look forward to your consideration and recommending at your consultants' reports, and after the end of the public hearing, a PUD concept plan approval recommendation, step 1, then pass to the township board. Thank you for your consideration, and if there's any questions that come up from the audience and from our neighbors, we're pleased to speak to them. I've been responding within minutes, not hours, not days, and they will attest to that. When the questions have come, I've immediately responded via either phone or email or otherwise. And at the same time, change has come. There's a $57 million investment in Baldwin Road, and that was been planning for 15 years. It finally come to fruition in the last 3 years, and the road's been open for about 18 months now, I believe. And this, I believe, complements that, but at the same time, most, not all, some people have been here for generations. Some people have been here for 10 or 20 years, but since the opening of the Great Lakes Crossing Mall in 1998, and all that foreseen growth and everything going forward, this shouldn't come as a surprise, and your master plan contemplated that, and we hope that we fulfill the needs and goals and objectives of your master plan, and we're not going to disappoint the neighbors. We're part and parcel with our headquarters and our families living in Orion Township. So thank you very much.
Thank you. You guys, as I go over some additional comments, if you guys want to step away from the podium and allow access for any public here this evening. Again, just a quick reminder, code of conduct is on our back of our agenda. We ask that everyone is just respectful to each other's thoughts. Please, all comments be directed to myself as the planning commissioner. I will be taking notes of comments and questions. Before we open it up to the public, a couple of comments here. Keep in mind that the PUD process is a multi-step process, and that involves both ourselves and the Board of Trustees, hence why they're here present tonight. It's a multi-step process between ourselves as a commission and them as a board. Goes through multi-steps from the current step of concept, the concept and density review is what you're seeing here this evening, and eligibility of a PUD. We saw here a very comprehensive set of plans that have clearly been thought through for many iterations as presented this evening, but this is not getting into all of the details. There's multi-steps involved that will be further deliberated, discussed, reviewed, similar to the previous project that was on the agenda this evening. So just as a general overview, bigger picture this evening, the Planning Commission, after the public hearing, it is on the agenda here to deliberate, and we are a recommending body. So anyone who's looking to stay involved in the process, the Planning and Zoning Office is always willing to provide you updates on when agenda items are to appear. Those are always publicly submitted. They're available on the TV outside of the building and available online too. So with that said, we'd like to officially open it up to the public for citizen comments and questions. If you're looking to make a comment, please state your name and address for the record, please. And if you could keep your comments and questions to about 3 minutes, that would be appreciated.
Great, thank you. So in reference to keeping to the 3 minutes, I'm going to read fast. I apologize, hang on fast. My name is Doug Black. I live at 4437 Peppermill Lane in Orion Township. My comments tonight are bittersweet because my wife's family has been friends with the Mosheri family for many decades. They're wonderful people and a great builder, and my comments are certainly not personal. As a resident that will be impacted by this development, I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm not here asking that we deny any request. Rather, what I would like to see is that we hold everybody accountable to our ordinances and standards, as well as that we keep in mind the visions and the goals and the objectives of Orion Township. I thought no better way to ask that is than to reference the 2022 Orion Township Master Plan, which obviously was designed as a guide for future development. As we're considering all the waivers for this project, I ask that you take into consideration how this aligns with the township's land development goals. Will it preserve the sensitive environmental features, such as what I thought was a 3.67 acre wetland? How will it impact stormwater management, avoid flooding and drainage problems? How will the development impact the woodlands and other natural features, including those tracked by the Michigan National Features Inventory? In terms of the PUD process, is this an example of development that will preserve green space and promote green infrastructure? As noted in the master plan, the PUD process should not be used to introduce a radical shift from the vision of the master plan. I question whether this project will support the desire to ensure that strip development land use patterns are halted and that new village-style concepts can take hold. For me personally, when I think of village styles, I don't think driving by building, parking lot, building, parking lot, building, parking lot. I know there are several versions of these plans, so maybe the new ones have addressed some of that. In terms of traffic, I've not had a chance to read the entire 214-page report, but I will say that they didn't have to go to Caledonia, Kalamazoo, or Okemos to see the impact that Chick-fil-A has on traffic. They just had to go see the mess on Hall Road in Shelby Township. Also, like to call to your attention, which you certainly already know, the master plan has identified approximately 88 acres across Baldwin Road that's been proposed for development. It's a priority redevelopment, including office research, industrial, commercial, residential, mixed use. Before all this happens, I hope that the Joslin Road is widened to alleviate the Baldwin traffic, which is also talked about in the master plan. When I think about housing, I ask that you take into consideration the longstanding interest of Orion Township to preserve and maintain natural features, open space. I'd like to quote the master plan: single-family residents are favored as the predominant land use in the edges of the district. I may be mistaken, but I think this property is in the edge of the district. And it appears that over 98% of the 460-plus proposed units are multifamily. When thinking about residential density, I quote the master plan: the township will review unique site characteristics in the surrounding areas to establish appropriate density through zoning. I question how the units per acre for this proposed development supports the goals and visions of Orion Township. I finish with these final thoughts. Will this rezoning and the subsequent development maintain natural features, a rural character, a community character, a village character, or a small town character? During the master plan process, the residents were asked what they wanted. I hope their voices were heard. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Marilyn Hester, 1207 Hemingway. I've been there since 1996. Prior to that, I was at 3881 Roar Road, and I moved there in 1984, and we moved out in 96 when they started building Great Lakes Crossing. When they paved Roar Road, my crawl space was flooded, and we decided that's when we've got to get out of there because they built the 320 homes along Baby Road, and Roar Road became a highway. It was, supposed to be 25 miles an hour. People going 45 miles an hour. I had young children. I was very worried about them riding their bikes. There's no sidewalks on Roar Road still. The development is beautiful. I don't think it's consistent with the existing surroundings and the existing neighborhoods. It doesn't really go with the environment that's there. If the traffic study was done, was that during COVID? Because I don't think that there's Baldwin Road can handle the amount of traffic currently. And people are going to need to walk because it's going to be so congested. They won't be able to go anywhere with the roads. There is a housing shortage, and I don't disagree with developing it. I just would like to see the houses have more land so that people can be neighbors and so that they can have grass, have lawns, you know, and just be neighborly and have the community experience. I would like the township to please consider the commercial side of this and how much impact Baldwin Road already has down at Kohl's and all the other commercial down the road. That's just a lot of people. It's just a lot more cars on the road down there, and it's already congested. So in the grocery store, I just want to remind everybody what happened in New Myers when Meyer and Kroger went up. They went out of business, and I know there were other issues too, but they got run out of town by the big box stores and Costco. So I would just like the Planning Commission to really please keep it more consistent with what exists and not to build this great big development. They will have to build something, I get it, but just keep it consistent with what's there. Have the people have some property, because that's what makes Orion Township so much wanted to be living here, because it does have the bigger lots and bigger homes and bigger community area. That's why I like it here.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Law. I live at 3388 Gingle. And I represent the community that is on the north end where that little pond is on the corner. That little thing that looks like a ladle, that's our driveway. And I'm here to I know that we can't stop progress. I'm not here to ask that. I'm not here to ask to build a wall, per se, between our community and this development, but my ask and my hope is that the Planning Committee takes into consideration that there's a seamless transition between this development and our development. So our development doesn't look like trash, and this one looks pretty with all the fountains. So if they could take into consideration when they're tearing down that forest between our community and the development, that they take into consideration and make that beautiful. And I think that, and also at the tip of the ladle, we have 3 units at the top of that. We have 24 units. We are a small community, but we have 3 units that are on that tip of that ladle, and they're going to be directly affected by those 3-story apartment buildings. So we ask too that, you know, any dumpsters or parking or lighting does not affect those buildings and those individuals and those residents. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name is Darcy Scavone. I live at 4571 Peppermill Court. We've lived in Lake Orion now since 2012. Initially, we moved to Lake Orion in 1995 at 915 Lakewood Drive. We lived there for 10 years, moved to Miami for 2 years, and came back. We love this community. Love the tagline that Orion is like, where living is a vacation. I don't think concrete and cars are my idea of a vacation. And that was a big reason why we did come back. One of the concerns I have with Baldwin Road is there's no light at Morgan. And so we have a standing joke at our house between November 1st and January 15th. We do not try to go south on Baldwin Road because we cannot get out, because it all backs up right there at Brown Road because of all the traffic from the shopping. So if we're going to consider doing this, and I too am not in the way of progress, I understand there's going to be development, Great Lakes Crossing is there. We have to be cognizant of the traffic considerations that are occurring right now. I'm a walker. Despite your best efforts with the crosswalks and the signs about pedestrian access, I can tell you I was walking twice this week and almost got hit 3 times. And people are driving entirely too fast up and down the road. When you come up over the hill going south on Baldwin Road, it goes to 45 miles an hour. We can't get out. So if we add additional cars there, could you please consider putting a light on Morgan Road and more heavily policing that area? and writing some tickets so that we can be safe, especially if you're expecting additional foot traffic because of this development. The other consideration that I would ask you to think about is, why do we need another car wash? There's a car wash just north of there. There's a car wash now on Brown. Why do we need another car wash? And then finally, when we talk about having dining options, I'm sorry, I know Chick-fil-A is wildly popular. I'm not a Chick-fil-A fan. That's not dining. That's fast food. So I'm not certain that that's exactly what your community had in mind. And really appreciate you listening this evening and appreciate the consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, I'm Mike Zotter. I live at 3955 Morgan Road, and I had some of the same concerns. The increased traffic congestion, especially at Morgan and Baldwin Road. Like the previous lady said, you know, traffic's coming at 45 miles per hour. It's really hard to get out there when it's the Christmas season. So it's basically going to be the Christmas season year-round now with an extra 465 residents, plus the Chick-fil-A and everything else that they're going to put in there. So, you know, I would think about another traffic light. I know we got roundabouts, but maybe a traffic light or a reduced speed so people aren't going quite as fast. My other concern is about the construction. And, you know, during construction, are those big trucks going to be coming down Morgan Road? Right now, between Baldwin and, you know, going down Morgan and Roar, those roads are pretty much shot. I mean, they're full of potholes. Is there going to be construction vehicles going down there now? And then when it's done, what's the increased traffic? Are we going to make road improvements between Baldwin and Clarkston? And then just to reiterate, you know, I've been in Lake Orion for 18 years. I love our motto, you know, life is like a vacation. This is going the opposite direction, in my opinion, from that. We're going to tear down a bunch of trees and, you know, pave it and build a Chick-fil-A. That's not what I had in mind when I moved to Lake Orion, so thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm technically a village resident. Am I allowed to comment?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
You're
Just
still
wanna
an
make
Orion
sure.
resident.
My name is Kirsten Barber. I live at 441 Newton Drive. I will try to fit this all in my 3-minute time, but I was making some notes as they were giving their presentation. I want to point out that Mosheri has no fewer than 4 PUDs in the Orion area, 3 on the east side of the lake, 1 near the Home Depot on 24, now we're adding this one. There's a lot going on. Just reminding everyone of that. They made a comment about outdoor dining along Baldwin. I don't want to sit out along Baldwin and see all that traffic while I'm having my dinner. That doesn't sound like an enjoyable experience for me personally, so I don't see that as an asset. The grocery store that they are proposing, I want to remind people that there are 6 within a very generous 2-mile radius, and they're also wanting an allowance to have it 3 times the size that the ordinance allows, so let's reconsider that, please. Like the other woman said, there's 2 car washes, again, within that very generous 2-mile radius. I don't think a third is needed. Chick-fil-A, again, fast food, I'm not a fan. It's not gonna entice me to come to the area. Actually might deter me from coming to the area because I don't want to deal with the traffic. It's going to increase the traffic. A comment about the traffic study, it was done on a Tuesday. Are traffic studies ever done like on a Friday or a Sunday or a Monday or anything like that? The one that they did for the village development was done on a Thursday after school was let out, so there was no school, you know, traffic taken into consideration for that development. So at least this one was done during the school year, so I'm appreciative of that. But if I read those traffic studies correctly, quickly while I was sitting here, it looks like there are some failing grades for the Judah roundabout. So let's take that into consideration. I think I heard correctly in the presentation that there were 4 or 5 entries to this neighborhood along Baldwin in a half-a-mile stretch. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but that seems like a whole lot of opportunity for accidents or, you know, problems. The gentleman that was presenting mentioned the expense of rentals. 300 units for that, and we'll assume 2 people per person, that's 600 people, 600 cars, assuming both drive. 160 townhouses, I'm seeing an average of 3 people living in that. That's almost another 500 people. Again, 2 cars per townhouse, that's another 320 cars. 16 duplexes, we'll say an average 3 to 4 people, that's about 50 people. Again, 2 cars, another 100 cars. That's almost 1,200 people and 1,000 cars. That sounds like a lot to me. I maybe missed it, but are there any true single-family homes, like one home, one building on a lot for a single family to live in, not a duplex, not a townhouse, single-family homes? Did I miss that? And then I heard something about, and this is a dialogue in my mind, and I apologize if it's wrong or if it comes out offensively, that's not what I'm trying to say, but I'm hearing, let us do what we want and we'll send money your way for safety paths and a kayak launch at Camp Agawam. Sounds like a bribe to me. Not a I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine kind of a thing. It's a let us do what we want and we'll shove money your way to make you happy. I don't like that. So I'm
wrap your
requesting that
comments,
you
please.
please don't allow the variances. Please restrict the size and scope of this. Please keep our green spaces. Remember the disastrous flooding last fall. Is this development going to prevent that from happening again, or is it going to contribute to more flooding? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name's Noah Stevens. I live at 3507 Pasadena. My property actually does border this in the most northwestern part of the property. So my current neighborhood, or my current property, also borderlines the cottages at Gregory. They raised that up quite a bit, probably 6-8 feet, and I now have flooding issues in my home. So I do appreciate this development being a little bit lower. It doesn't sound like I would have the same flooding issues. I did want to look at the numbers here a little bit because I do know 465 units. They're quoting at 9 units per acre. But if we just look at just the last meeting where Original Terrace was approved, that was 101 units on 15.95 acres, that's 6.33 units per acre. Willow Creek Apartments, which was also approved on that night, which was 104 units at 18.5 acres. That, again, is 5.6 units per acre. Even the properties that are bordering the cottages, which were just approved in 2019, that's 2.2 homes per acre. The Gregory Meadows, just down the street, that's 1.49 homes per acre. So it doesn't seem like this is really in line with what we are trying to aim for. I obviously do not want 20 units per acre at all. So, if I had to choose one or the other, I'd obviously choose this one. But I am a little bit concerned with the schools, traffic, everything. I would like to see, some sort of Lake Orion schools trying to see if they could accommodate, let's say 1 child per unit. Could they accommodate an extra 500 students? Car wash, same thing. I see Tommy's is down on Brown Road, but we still have one like less than a half a mile away from here. So I would like to look at, maybe lessening the unit population in this development. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Alicia Natavio, 4526 Peppermill Lane. I too am concerned with this development in the comparison of how dense it is compared to the current zoning of suburban farm and R1. I think it'll negatively impact both the traffic and our neighborhood's quality. The attached duplexes, the single-family attached duplexes that are located adjacent to our neighborhood are also too dense in comparison to our current neighborhood that's zoned R1. So a couple of questions about that. Is there any consideration for possibly increasing the setback even 25 more feet? If there is a pool, a patio, or a deck installed on those duets, how does that impact? Where's the measurement start from the patio or from the building itself? And how many feet of existing tree line will be cleared? So how much is going to be gone from what we have currently? A couple comments on the high volume drive-through chain, the Chick-fil-A. I think obviously the traffic flow entrance, the queue area should be reevaluated even more closely. Backups on Baldwin are imminent. They'll impact the traffic flow. They already regularly occur if you've ever been in that area on any weekend day, right exactly where that Chick-fil-A is going to be. It's a nightmare. We can't get in and out of our neighborhood. Finally, safety should be concerned, as like somebody already mentioned, the speed limit's 45. Coming down that hill on Baldwin, people are going much faster than 45 routinely. Adding in additional stopping points is just going to be a potential problem for issues. Is there any consideration to reducing the speed limit? Can we add a traffic light, like was mentioned before at Baldwin and Morgan? Is there any opportunity for limiting the access to this area, to that Judah roundabout, as opposed to having all these different access points to the area? I do want to commend the township for the work that has been done to make the Baldwin corridor more inviting, walker, biker friendly. With the addition of the safety pass, the roundabouts, the crosswalks, these have definitely afforded my family, certainly, the ability to enjoy our community without having to get in a car to drive someplace to be outside safely. I love being able to step out of my front yard and go for a run for miles and feel pretty comfortable and safe doing that on these safety pass. I love that my kids have gained independence to take their bikes to their friends in different neighborhoods and go to Menchie's and get treats, and they love that. And I love that. But you're telling me that 4 additional access points on Baldwin, they're going to have to cross in order to go north on that Baldwin. I have a hard time believing that without any additional safety measures, we're not going to have more problems. So that really feels like 4 more intersections in that high traffic volume and speed situation that need to be crossed will definitely impact the ability for us to enjoy the community that you have helped build.
Thank you for your comments.
Angie DeBrinket, 4400 Peppermill Lane. I used to live on the dead end at Morgan Pines that now connects to the cottages at Gregory. The only time I've ever spoke at one of these meetings was in October of 2019 when I opposed the rezoning of the land north of my home, which is now called the cottages at Gregory Meadows. While my neighbors and surrounding residents were concerned about the increased traffic because of the potential road connection, I expressed my concerns about drainage. Fast forward 2.5 years, and after a whole lot of excavation and erosion, we are still in the process of rebuilding and replacing the contents of 90% of my walkout basement that was destroyed from a mudslide. Aside from the traumatic experience itself, which is on film, it's been made even more difficult with the pandemic and the recession. After that formal meeting in 2019, a few neighbors gathered and spoke with Supervisor Barnett about installing a gate at the end of Peppermill. He promised he would fight for the gate, but also explained that with our proximity to I-75, there was only a matter of time before higher density housing would be built in this area. I know this meeting is to discuss the rezoning proposal, but we aren't naive and know that this is 99% moving forward. I don't expect our friends and neighbors to have any say in the development of this property. What I do hope is that the township takes the necessary steps to protect its current residents from any property damage and devaluation. How fitting that it's raining today. I continue to have concerns about the drainage and runoffs from changing the landscape. I continue to worry about how the immense disruption of the land and continuous removal of trees will impact my property and that of my neighbors. I know that the township has adopted a new set of stormwater management and soil erosion and control ordinances, but those mean nothing if they aren't enforced. I hope that moving forward that our township employees and the engineering firm it employs will do their jobs and make sure our homes are safe. I hope that in the extreme event that something catastrophic occurs, that our township and the proposed developer will have the integrity to halt the development until any problems are resolved to the satisfaction of all parties. And after listening to the proposal, I just have a few more comments. I want to know what residents were surveyed, because I haven't heard anything from the residents around this area that is positive and, yeah, let's do this. I don't think we need another car wash. And Chick-fil-A is not that good. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Lastly, how much money will be put into escrow for this development? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Erin Wolf. I live at 4453 Peppermill Lane. My property is just kind of parallel to the wetlands there. And we've lived there for about 10 years now. And I just, like the other people have said, yes, the traffic is a huge concern with this. I'm actually, would like for you guys to keep it as suburban farms. I mean, the idea of suburban farms, it's houses on 2.5 acres and with the land. But with that, if that doesn't happen, traffic is my concern. Schools are very concerned. Lake Orion did that redistricting a few years back. Our area, my kids' classrooms went from 21 to 33. I mean, it is, so you add all these other additional children. I mean, even the buses, the kids had to sit, they're overfilled, they have to sit on backpacks in the middle of the aisleway. It's not safe. But my huge concern is about the drainage. Those wetlands are protected, and there's actually 3 wetlands, and from the report that they actually submitted back in November of 2021, it states that wetland A drains into wetland B, drains into wetland C. Well, wetland A is the larger one. Part of it is actually what they're planning to fill. Now, when you put cement and buildings right there, where's that water gonna go? Because they're gonna also fill in the wetland B and C. And this study was done the actual on the property field was done in November. The land's pretty frozen. Right now, if you went, when we came here, our street, because of all the drainage when the trees were removed from the other development, it is literally like a river going down our road. I actually wanted to videotape it coming here because the drainage is horrible. So to me, with those wetlands, if you're gonna fill in those other 2, and then partially of that one, where's the water gonna go? Into my yard? I mean, I know that they were saying that it will go towards Morgan, but when you have all this other development around there, that's my concern, especially seeing after what happened to my neighbor's house, and we were concerned about that. So, all in all, I know it's gonna get developed, but could you really even consider, if it does pass through, making sure that those wetlands are preserved, because that is part of the drainage and just the system, so. With that said, so, thank you. And coming off of Morgan, I'm sorry, trying to turn south, now even that we have to do the Michigan left to even go north, any time of the day. I leave for work at 6:30 in the morning. There's traffic going south. Everyone's trying to get onto 75, so it is quite congested, so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm Don Hickman. I live on 3731 Gregory Road. I'm just curious, how does it propose to get into the car wash and Chick-fil-A? It looks like you get in about 1/3 of the way up the development on Baldwin Road, so they kind of filter through the development just to get to Chick-fil-A and then filter back through to get out. I guess that's a lot better than dumping everybody on Morgan Road, but it's just kind of a curious development. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Additional public comment.
Mr. Chairman and the Township Board and consultants, this has been the most polite audience that I've heard in years. And at the same time, their concerns are very legitimate, and we're listening. It's a couple things. There was a concern at the north end of our proposal. Let me get the light on here. Well, there's we call it the ladle at the top end there. The name of that street is, what is the name of that street? If you could help me out, please. Okay. Gingle Drive, okay. There's that, you see the Uptown building that's a longer building at the north property line? We're going to flip that, move it further away from the property. We're listening, I just talked to my engineer, making sure that's possible. That is lower than the property to the north, but so we're going to move that further away and also for both traffic circulation and move that further away from those homes at Gingle Drive. I just double-checked with my land planner. That's the next step. This is for PUD qualification in the first step, but we'll see that change. I just wanted to confirm that that can be done. But thank you for your comments, and at the same time, they're sincere, and it is a big change. We do admit that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any additional public comment from the audience this evening? All right, can we read a tally of the citizen letters into the record? And general overview, we obviously have a number of comments made of concern of natural features, traffic, what mitigation and measures for access, uses, the concern of uses proposed, concern of buffers, including measurements from any proposed patios with tree lines being affected is also in concern, or any single-family units being proposed, concerns with drainage and flooding, any measures for decreased home values of surrounding area, who is surveyed for the public input portions, what would be some of the escrow contributions, concerns with school capacity, and wetland mitigation measures and concerns are, I guess, some of the main topics of pulling out some of the discussion points from the public hearing. So if you could read the rest, I guess, into the record if there's something additional proposed.
Sure. So we received 4 letters in regard to this development from a Chris Reinhardt on Morgan Road, a Sharon Jasso on Peppermill Lane, Matthew Kurlick and Daniel Stern of Baldwin Commons LLC in Troy. They are, I think they're the developers of the Kohl's Mall. And then Julie Branton on Gingle Drive. And in a nutshell, they were, all of them opposed the development. Their concerns are summarized. They were concerned about, they were looking for greater setbacks, concerned about the negative traffic impacts on the area, and concerns about the supporting infrastructure, loss of woodlands and wetlands, land erosion, and concerns about the types of businesses that would be going in the commercial portion of this development.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to the Planning Commission for additional thoughts, questions during the public hearing. Seeing none, I'll turn it over to the Board of Trustees.
Go ahead, Mike. Chris? Yeah. Being a lifelong resident, living here all my life, seeing all the changes in Gingerville, along Baldwin Road, the whole township. It's too bad they built I-75, because that's what changed a whole northern Oakland County. Lived seeing that. We've known this property would be developed someday. I know the locals refer to it as Adler property. Originally, it was the Muto property. That's where they had their apple orchard. The township rezoned all that property back in the 1960s, all along Baldwin, when 75 got built. That's why there's no more single-family homes along there. They had to all become commercial once they sold the property. Get you home, I think that's Dr. Dalecki's chiropractor there. Leach, that's a business office now. There's only a couple of houses left there. My concern is also with the residents. No one likes growth. But you got to be able to go with change and what's going to be best in that area. That is a congested area, especially with that traffic light there at Panera, at Baldwin Commons. And then you got the next traffic light at Brown Road. Then 75 Exchange area. How you can ever figure that one out is beyond me. But like I said, that property, we know for years it's going to be developed. And I know once they were waiting for Baldwin Road to be done. And Baldwin Road is done. And I know there's going to be future development across the road from that, too. All those family homes were torn down. That was a Smoot's farmland right there. So I'm curious to see what we come up with on the eligibility and concept plan and your recommendation to us. I know you do your due diligence and take into consideration, too, what the residents are concerned about. That's my statement.
Thank you. Anything, Ms. Dalrymple? Ms. Steele?
I appreciate all the extra landscaping. I think that that helps the beauty of the development. I've always been concerned about the density because that is a lot of people and commercial buildings right there in that spot. And I know you've reduced that as well. I always do appreciate when they're owned homes because I think that people have more invested when they own the property, not just lease it. I do believe the Mosheri developments have always been kept up really nice, which I appreciate that, and I think that this will go do that as well. The density, I think, is my biggest concern, and I think that the look of some of those commercial buildings can be scrutinized a little bit better to maybe have more better outside design to make it more like a community and walkable development than just big boxes. The big boxes get tiring after a while, but I think my biggest concern is the impact and the density, because I do understand there's a lot going on there at Christmas time especially. So I'm hoping that with some time and effort that we can come to because it will be developed, it is their property, it's their personal property to be able to develop it. Just hoping that it can be satisfying to both the people that live there and for the developer. So I have confidence in this group. Thank you.
Thank you. A few things from me. First of all, just procedurally, some of you might be your first time here. Thanks for coming. We're glad you're here. We do want your input. It might seem strange, right after this, we're going to get up and leave, and they're going to deliberate. We're not leaving because we're not interested. It's just how this process works. This will be recommended for approval or denial to the Township Board. As our chair mentioned, there are many steps in this process. This is the first of many. But it's great to have the feedback. I echo what I've heard today, and I do want to say, this is tough. It's a tough position because usually the people that come here are not coming because they're excited about something. We usually see residents that are here because, raise your hand if it's your first time here, by the way. Welcome, we're glad to have you. But that's typically what we see, and that's okay, that's normal. That's actually how I got involved. Actually, someone was trying to build something in my backyard, and 12 years ago I showed up to one of these meetings, and here I am now. So be careful. But anyway, I will just talk about this property for a little bit. I mean, this has long been planned to be developed and be something similar to this. Frankly, our last master plan and the current master plan update kind of talk about this type of development. The overlay districts were designed to sort of attract kind of the population density to the main thoroughfares. You know, we have 3 really north-south thoroughfares, Lapeer, Joslin, and Baldwin, with Baldwin being the second busiest. And then the project, the road improvement project that was talked about and planned for, 30 years plus, and finally was deployed and developed. And thanks to the Township Board and the great work on the Corridor Improvement Authority, we were able to do some of those great improvements. Because if it was just up to the Road Commission, it would have been a $40 million project with maybe one side of the road with sidewalks and no landscaping. So we were able to do all those things, but that road was designed with this type of density in mind for this development. That was part of the process with the Road Commission when the project was designed in MDOT. And then just let me talk a little bit about the evolution of the project. It was mentioned by the applicants, but I've been in this role for 10 years, and we've been talking about this site for longer than I've been here. But really, for the last 5 years, I've been working with the family that owns the property, and we have seen, I don't know the number, but they have come into our office and met with us dozens and dozens of times. And I can tell you, we sent them away lots and lots of times, and you heard about the original density. You're gonna hear from our consultants that tell you, I understand what everybody thinks, but, you know, what our ordinance outlines for these properties. And, you know, even as recent as a month or two ago, when the plan was getting really formulated, I said in lots of these meetings, and maybe it's not appropriate to say on TV, but I just kept saying it's not sexy enough. That's the word I came up with. It's not upscale enough. It's not fitting of our community. No disrespect to the folks here, but I will tell you, and we've dealt with a lot of different proposed home builders for this project. Obviously, you're hearing from Mr. Mosheri and the Mosheri family tonight. I will tell you, the products we're seeing in the architecture and the level of landscaping and other amenities are by far and above what we've seen with the other people that have been working with these property owners over the last several years since I've been working with them. So the evolution has gone, in my opinion, really well from where we started to where we are now. As mentioned, it is private property. We've done a really great job, I think, and worked really hard to add park amenities. We have 2 pocket parks on Baldwin, one with a giant dragon on it, another one just north of this site that will hopefully be developed very soon. But we want more green space as well. Some of the things I wanted to note, some of the previous plans, you can fill in wetlands in Michigan. There's a process. You just heard about it from GM if you were listening. Some of the earlier site plans were filling in the wetlands. When the Mosheri family became involved, they said, no, we want to make that a feature and amenity and protect that, which I think is a real positive thing from what we saw in previous iterations of the plan. We do a community survey, and as crazy as it sounds, well, the grocery store might not be crazy, but we've had consistently for the last 10 years, more grocery options have been the number one thing our residents have asked for. I think this grocer will be a welcome addition to the community. And then the other thing that people ask a lot for, and I don't totally get it either, as some of you mentioned, but this craze about the one fast food restaurant. I still think there are things that need to be improved as well. I think that this is the first step in frankly, quite a long process. This is really kind of to look at the overall project, but a lot of those fine details will be worked out. A couple more things I wanted to cover. We did get a grant through Southeast Michigan Council of Governments in partnership with MDOT, the Road Commission for Oakland County, and Auburn Hills to look at that whole traffic situation at Brown and the retail, during high retail. It's my desire that we come up with a fix for that, and we have some ideas that will really help that situation. We don't have the funding lined up, but I'm chasing that. And so we are cognizant of that. A lot of the traffic stuff, I think one of the things I was really skeptical about the development that happened in my old backyard was I didn't believe any of the traffic. I did the exact same thing. I counted all the houses. Everybody has 2 cars. And I actually sat in on the traffic study because I didn't believe it. I watched them count the cars. And so I think we do need to lean on the experts on that, listen to their advice. Our consultants work for us. The developers propose and bring their consultant team, and I will tell you, I used to be in the construction business for 15 years before I had this job. The team they have assembled are literally, I'm not saying because they're just sitting here, are some of the best in the entire Midwest, not just Michigan. So I'm confident in the team they have, but we will fact check all that and make sure that we agree. The discussion about the gate and the cross access, our ordinance requires these connections. Peppermill didn't end in a T or a roundabout because it was always envisioned that it was going to connect. And I'll be honest with you, if you attended those meetings, you know that our fire marshal was not happy about the fact that we were able to put a gate in. Obviously, it opens in emergencies, but it was really meant to just connect. So some of those things, I get it because that's exactly the scenario I lived in on Roxbury Court. I had a nice little basketball court and volleyball court that my kids could play on because it was a dead-end road, but it was meant to be connected to someplace in the future. And I understand that. I mean, we're super empathetic of all these concerns. I will tell you that I'm interested in hearing from these folks because I think they're willing to hear and actually try to do some things. But cutting the density to suburban estates or farms is not realistic. It's not. I just want to be clear on that. I also have I have a regular standing meeting with the superintendent of schools, Ben Kirby. He and the school district are excited about the potential for more students. They have a plan. I can't get into that in detail, but I have talked to him because I had the same questions. Are we ready for more students? Do we have the capacity? Our classroom is going to be overloaded? The answer is yes, we're ready. Yes, we have capacity, and no. So we'll learn more about that from them, but this obviously isn't going to happen overnight. And I think those are some of the main things. There's been a really good dialogue. We have developers that come here and try to ram stuff through and don't care about what anyone says. I will say that I've been very skeptical and scrutinized these folks all through this process, and they've been really good about taking the input they've gotten from our team, from our consultants, from the people that sit in some of these pre-development meetings, and trying to appease us. So those are my comments. More to come. We're not leaving in a minute because we're not interested. We will be all probably watching this from our home, but this will be coming to the township board meeting soon, more than once. So those are my comments. Anything else from the board? Close our comments and send it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. The petitioner already spoke to some of the points of concern and some of the modifications. We are going to get into additional deliberation during the new business action item. So at this point in time, it is now 9:29. I would like to close the public hearing and reconvene our regular meeting. If you are going to leave, if you could just do so quietly, that would be appreciated. We still have some business items. I will turn it over to the Board of Trustees.
Mr. Chair, I would, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn our special meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Flood, supported by Steele. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? You have my gavel, but we're adjourned at 9:30. Back to you, sir. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we officially are going to reconvene the meeting at 9:30. As I mentioned, this project is still on the agenda as a new business item. You guys had a comprehensive presentation earlier. Is it okay if we transition to our professional consultants for their review? Okay. At this point in time, I'll turn over to Giffords Webster for their planning review of the proposal.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I do want to apologize that our letter was later than we anticipated. I looked at your agenda packet tonight. Your agenda packet is 1,016 pages long for a 2-item agenda. I don't think I've ever seen that in my entire life. You happen to have 2 of the most significant projects in this township having to come in at the same time. And it's, we've been working nights, we've been working weekends, trying to get these reviews done for you, but there's only so many hours in the day. We appreciate your patience, but we're trying to get the work done. The other thing I want to point out is I want to kind of go through the presentation tonight and give you an overview of what this process is about. I think you've heard a lot about what the project is, so I'm not going to go into that. But this PUD process is intended to provide for flexibility in development. That's one of the main reasons why it's there, why it was put into the state statute, was to provide for that and to provide for creativity. This is the concept stage here, so we're in the PUD concept. The applicant's plan that was submitted is actually much more detailed than sometimes you see at the concept stage. We did go through and identify a series of waivers that would be necessary, but that's not before you tonight. You're not acting on the waivers. That comes later with the final PUD plan. But we did think that that would be of benefit, particularly to the applicant and to the Planning Commission, to have that information as this project is continuing to evolve. This is not going to be the final plan. We know that. And tonight you're really looking at a concept. As the PUD ordinance states, upon the finding that the concept plan meets the criteria sets forth with the intent of this section, the Planning Commission shall recommend concept plan approvals to the Township Board. Approval by the Township Board shall constitute approval of the uses, density, and design concepts. So that's what's before you tonight, thinking about the uses that are in this proposal, looking at the density and the general design concept. So recognizing that you're not locked into this exact design. And in the past, when you've had PUDs, you've given them certain direction. Before it comes back, we would like to see this, or we would like to see this. So you certainly have the ability to do that this evening as well, so that some of your concerns can be addressed when the final PUD comes back, if it gets to that stage. So the other thing I think it's important for everyone who's new to this process, as well as just as a refresher, if the concept plan is approved by the Township Board after the Planning Commission makes a recommendation, the applicant will have 12 months to submit their final plan that would then come back to the Planning Commission and then ultimately go through the process that's outlined in the ordinance. So when we're considering a concept plan, the mix and arrangement of uses should be reviewed by the Planning Commission. Considering the vision of the master plan, so one of the questions that obviously would be asked, and the applicant's been discussing that this evening, is does this overall plan appear to be in alignment with the vision in your master plan? This is a project that's very complex and very unique, having all the different zoning classifications, having the biz zoning to the south, having the overlay district, the Gingiville overlay district here. It really makes it a very complex project. And one of the things you're seeing is the uses that are at the southern end of the project in the biz district are uses that wouldn't typically be found within the Gingiville overlay, but in this case, they're putting them where the zoning is basically structured. This project does propose 465 attached residences and 70,000 square feet of commercial space. Regarding the density, the ultimate density, according to what the way your PUD ordinance is structured, is that it shall be recommended by the Planning Commission and determined by the Township Board and shall be based upon the underlying zoning and a density credit or the density as designated in the Township Master Plan. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. This property has approximately 63 gross acres, 59 net. 6.3 acres is zone biz, so that's the southern portion, and about 53 plus acres is in the Gingiville overlay. The concept plan proposes a density of 9.76 dwelling units per acre. If you read the Gingiville overlay district, it does talk about the potential for up to 20 dwelling units per acre if certain criteria is met. The underlying density, without having to meet that extra criteria, is 9 dwelling units per acre. So what's proposed and what's before you is very close to what even the underlying density in the Gingiville district would be. And the applicant, as you've seen in their application, believes that they qualify for additional density credit. They believe they have an exemplary project. They provided you with information. We'll talk about that in a minute too. So just from a density perspective, this isn't like a traditional PUD where you're going from larger lot, single family, and they want to come in with smaller lots, single family, and you're making that kind of comparison. This is really something where the underlying density in the zoning district is already fairly dense. It's the Gingiville overlay district, which overlays on top of the underlying zoning that's in place. The township master plan, obviously something very important for consideration when you're looking at a plan unit development. You have a new master plan in place. This is a core area of one of the key 15-minute neighborhoods. And when we look at the master plan, it says for this area that it's intended to be the range of uses that are outlined in the Gingiville overlay district. It talks about low-intensity retail, office, and professional uses. Big box shall be restricted. Mixed-use developments, including residential, commercial, are encouraged. And then deep parcels shall be reserved for residential uses. One of the things that's changed with the master plan is the previous master plan did envision primarily single family as the type of residential use that would be on this type of property. The new master plan update looks more towards missing middle housing, more attached units in smaller buildings, not big apartment units where you've got 100 units in one building, but the smaller detached missing middle products, and a lot of what you're seeing in this plan reflects some of those missing middle type products. Moving on, the master plan. Well, I think I've covered that enough. The grocery store. You have a proposal here for a grocery store, and yes, it does exceed that 13,000 square foot maximum. I would point out, however, though, that most grocery stores are larger than that. The underlying restricted business district, which the Gingellville overlay district refers to, it would allow a grocery store. This type of grocery store is not the large-scale ones that you see in the market. This is a smaller scale. I happen to think it makes sense in the core of a district like this to have a grocery store because we're trying to provide for convenience shopping. And the smaller scale size, I think, is something that is attractive in terms of trying to meet those goals. Pedestrian access. We've spent a lot of time in some of the meetings that have been referred to, some of the pre-application meetings, talking about pedestrian access. This plan has changed dramatically in terms of the amount of pedestrian connections that are provided. And we think that the applicant has done an excellent job responding to comments that were made, adding those connections and really filling it out throughout this particular project. It is one of the criteria you're going to look at. Of course, the connection to the cottages at Gregory Meadows is a question. As you know, that was intended to be a stub street that would have connected into this property. The applicant has already mentioned to you that there are issues with grading. There's a steep fall off there, and so what they're proposing instead of both vehicular and pedestrian connection is a pedestrian connection. And certainly that needs to be there at a minimum. But that's something obviously for you to talk about whether or not you think a vehicular connection would be something that should be pursued. But having the pedestrian connection is critical because the whole idea is that you really want residents that live next door to be able to walk and come into this community and take advantage of some of these uses that are here. That's the whole idea of the village concept. You don't always have to get in your car to go to a grocery store. You don't always have to get in your car to go to a restaurant or to go to a small retail establishment. So hopefully those things would happen if this development were to move forward. And then, of course, because this is a PUD eligibility is important. You have criteria, and that needs to be reviewed. And I'm going to spend the rest of my time talking about that. Section 30.03 talks about PUD criteria. And you can recommend variations to certain ordinance provisions, and tonight the key issue deals with density. I've already talked about how potentially greater density could be built on this parcel based on the Gingellville overlay standards. In terms of the parallel plan, the applicant did provide a parallel plan, and in that parallel plan, they talked about why they think a density bonus is warranted. And they've, in your ordinance, no less than 2 of 6 possible elements have to be provided, and they've listed several: the 20% open space, the comprehensive stormwater management plan, the preservation of 2.6 acre high-quality wooded wetland on the site, as well as buffers, the contributions to off-site public improvements, and then the what they're saying is the additional exemplary design and development elements within the development itself, which they've gone over with you. So they believe that justifies that, so that's also for your consideration. And as you know, PUDs, the recognizable benefit is an important consideration. They've showed, those are in our letter, so definitely something to review. Economic impact is something to review, looking at how this relates to adjacent properties. The guaranteed open space, they're meeting and exceeding that guaranteed open space in your PUD. They've shown that this is under unified control. So those are all items in your ordinance that need to be addressed. Compatibility with adjacent uses is something that was talked about tonight. Once again, this is a concept. It sounds like the applicant's going to be making some adjustments later on down the road to modify some of those issues. I would suggest in your discussions tonight that if you have some concerns about that you also share, so that if this project continues to move forward, that those types of concerns can be reflected in final plans if they are submitted. And then transitional areas, once again, that's very, very similar to the types of working with how this how this project relates to surrounding properties. And then the architectural and site element design will really get addressed at the time of the final plan when it is submitted. So that's a summary of my comments. I just wanted to focus on what the key items for your consideration this evening, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your review. We'll turn to OHM for their engineer's review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our letter of July 27th was our review of the concept PUD from an engineering feasibility standpoint. The developer's already given a nice summary, so I'll skip over that. We did take a look at the density plan to see if it was feasible. Everything seemed to check out as far as driveway locations being similar to that in the concept PUD, the larger wetland on sites being maintained along with the buffer. There's adequate room set aside for stormwater management, so we really didn't see any issues from an engineering standpoint on the density plan. As far as the concept PUD, we did take a look at the proposed density and the impacts to the water and sewer system. Both systems have adequate capacity to serve the proposed development as shown. We would like to remind the applicant to include franchise utility easements in future submittals and at final PUD. Those could have some spatial implications as they need to be separate from water and sewer easements. So that's just a reminder. Stormwater management, as mentioned, the applicant is proposing underground detention at the southern end. There's kind of a grade break near the car wash, so that southern portion kind of drains to the south, and then the rest of it kind of drains northeast. So they are obviously proposing a large regional stormwater detention pond in the northeast corner, which will outlet underneath Baldwin Road to the east. We will, of course, make them, confirm downstream capacity as we proceed in the development of engineering plans and the final PUD. Traffic and circulation, the on-site drives and roads, parking spaces, everything seems to check out with the ordinance requirements. We did get a traffic impact study late. We didn't have time to review it in time for our letter to be issued, but it was our opinion that that review could be made a part of the final PUD, since, as Supervisor mentioned, the reconstruction of Baldwin Road did take into consideration the future development, so we really have no concerns with the capacity of Baldwin Road. The traffic study is really just going to kind of focus in on driveway locations and impacts to crossovers and such. Similarly, we did get a wetland delineation report late, unable to review and provide a separate review for that yet. That will be coming in later, again, as part of final PUD. Just per cursory review, it appears that they are going to preserve the large wetland on site with a very minor impact. I think it's, they're saying 0.07 acres of impact to that wetland. And then there's two smaller 0.02 and 0.003 acre wetlands that it would be proposing to fill. So pretty minor in the grand scheme of things. Overall, it was our opinion that the concept PUD was in substantial compliance with the township ordinances and engineering standards. What we did ask that any approval include 4 conditions. I'll just kind of go through those one at a time. Number 1 was that consideration should be given to make the road connection to the cottages at Gregory Road, or Gregory Meadows. As mentioned, that connection was pre-planned. We didn't intend for a road connection there. We did the math. It looks like it would be about a 6% grade, which is, at the upper end of the township limits, but it's certainly feasible and desirable, for the residents in the cottages or within this development to get access to some of the commercial and kind of stay off some of the other thoroughfares. Number two, traffic impact study was recently submitted, but not in time, as mentioned. We're recommending that that be part of the final PUD. Also part of the final PUD, number three, we are asking that the applicant include infiltration measures, commonly referred to as channel protection, volume control, and the new stormwater standards. Those could have some spatial implications to make room for those. And then lastly, number four, we are recommending that the ingress-only drive approach that's located directly across from the north to south crossover on Baldwin Road, which would be the entrance for Chick-fil-A, that be removed or adjusted as we have concerns relative to backing up, insufficient storage in the taper for that crossover. So we're concerned that there could be some backups on Baldwin Road as people queue up to get into that Chick-fil-A. So that was a summary of our review, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. We did have reviews from our fire marshal. There was some items that can and need to be addressed during final engineering if the project is to proceed. Water Resource Commissioner did have a review along with Public Services, which is an internal department. There was a site walk report completed by our site walk committee, and I believe that goes through the main points. Couple of items. I guess before we turn over to the Planning Commission, I do appreciate everyone that's come out tonight. I know a lot of people have left, but I do echo that. Thank you for the respectful conversation and points of concern. We are listening, and obviously we're citizens and residents just like you. So I'll kick off a couple of comments. Overall, I know this is a very large parcel, and many people, including myself, it's reluctant to see development in lieu of keeping land, but private development and property owners have rights to develop. I do think, although large, it is a thoughtful development that has improved over time, and I think the density proposed could be significantly, higher in many proposals as we've seen in the past. And I do think a lot of the amenities have been rearranged to essentially keep open space, keep the pedestrian amenities provided, and to see the not only baseline requirement that we frequently fight up here as a planning commission to be provided in a plan to just be brought forth as being proposed is appreciated. The other piece to this, I know there's concern about some of the uses, and I don't question necessarily myself some of the uses, but I do question their implications as they relate to traffic. I know Baldwin corridor has plenty of capacity as currently designed, but it is something to consider as what uses are going in there. The one piece about having this being a large parcel under unified control and development is that things like detention, we're seeing a lot of very nice planning ideas implemented here that would otherwise, if singularly controlled or developed, that we wouldn't always see. I'm an architect by nature, so there's a lot of these things of the buildings up by the Baldwin corridor with nice landscaping. A lot of times we're trying to squeeze every little bit of our engineering standards on a parcel versus understanding that they could be combined and pushed towards one location. So I do think there's a lot of positives. Now, I am in support of the residential varying uses. We've worked many, many, many months and many hours on our master plan this past year and a half, and it does start to check some of those boxes of some other housing types that the township does need. Now, do I believe the plan as proposed right here is perfect? No, I do not believe that. I do think, although I think the project is eligible for a PUD and the density and uses proposed are reasonable, I do think there needs to be some further discussion and review based on the traffic, so specifically some of those cross-access and ingress and egress of the site adjacent to some of these uses, especially ones that we know will likely create some havoc if not done properly. I do have some concern with some of the buffers. I understand that some of these retail developments are searching for certain parking requirements or circulation, but buffers are important to us. So all of the comments here this evening speaking to not just having the minimum buffer, but an increased buffer. I know there are measures being already proposed, but I think there's a number of potential waivers as the plan is presented here this evening that would affect some buffers and ordinances that we typically like to see. The other piece that I would like to have us take a deeper look into is with the minor wetland kind of mitigation measures that are being proposed, some understanding and I guess forethought from the developer to the concern around the adjacent neighborhoods of, you have a largely graded site with a lot of grading that's existing, to kind of prove and especially with our new stormwater management standards to show that drainage is being withheld on the site and that it isn't going to negatively impact any of the neighbors, because we don't want de-evaluation of properties or creating havoc on people adjacent. The last comment before I turn it over to my fellow planning commissioners would be, I do think the residential proposals have a nice aesthetic. It looks like they're well thought out. I do think the commercial side needs a little bit of help. Maybe that's intentional with maybe some of the tenants that aren't able to be announced or known yet are being shown. But, for example, some of the flat roofs being proposed, that's something that we typically stray away from in this district. Some of the blank facades, although I appreciate the buildings having all of these pedestrian amenities, I think there needs to be a little bit of further development towards the pedestrian scale. And although I'm in support of kind of this neighborhood scale grocer, and I understand its orientation on the site, I think there needs to be some deeper dive into what it looks like from the main entrance point and the Baldwin corridor. So with that, I'll kick off, I guess, the opportunity for fellow planning commissioners to have discussions or comments. Mr. Gross. Sorry, Mr. Walker, go ahead.
I'm conflicted. Thank you. I'm conflicted because my microphone wasn't on. Mr. Mocheri is a fine developer. His team is, I'm sure, as you've heard from everybody around here today, is a great team. When I reviewed this initially, I thought, I don't like it. And I didn't know why. I mean, I analyzed it from the ordinance side of things, the PUD, what qualifies as a PUD. And when you go through the application, you can check off those boxes pretty easily. You can't. Normally, when an applicant comes in, it's his experts against our experts. Today, his experts and our experts are kind of right in lockstep. I'm still not convinced, and I don't know why I'm not convinced. Part of it, I think, is it doesn't fit my personal view. This is just me speaking, not the planning commission or the township or anybody. It doesn't fit my view of Orion Township. During the presentation, they indicated that some of the buildings, they didn't want it to look like a Royal Oak. and I wanted to be Scandinavian, and if I misquote, I apologize to all of that. But to me, it looks like it, I don't know where it belongs. It belongs someplace, I don't want to say nicer than Orion Township. I've lived here for 34 years. I love it here. But it just doesn't fit into my concept of what I would like to see that area look like. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Mr. Gross.
Yeah. Since I've been on the Planning Commission, I think this is the first real planned unit development project that we've had come before us. It's a mixed-use development consisting of residential, retail, office, commercial, open space, on a single 60-acre parcel, as opposed to 10 or 6 10-acre parcels individually, unrelated to one another. So I'm excited about that. In addition, I think with the overlay district that we have with Gingleville, I think that provides us with some additional, I don't want to say protection, but opportunities to create something that's different than what normally would be expected on the site. Talk about this as a part of the master plan, embracing the 15-minute neighborhood. And I think we have to look at this as more than just a neighborhood of the apartments on the existing development. I think it extends beyond the borders of this site. And taking that into account, I think we've got to take a look at what is happening or could happen across the street on Baldwin, and how do we get folks from the east side of Baldwin to the west side of Baldwin safely. And that's got to be done with some form of traffic considerations and monitoring and the like. I was on the site plan or the site walk committee that visited the site, and my first observation when I saw it was that this is a heavily wooded site. And with innovation and proper planning, there's an opportunity to take advantage of that landscaping, that existing woods, especially around the borders of the property adjacent to the existing residential sites. Rather than going, and I saw what they did with the cottages on to the north, and they kind of like said, let's take out all the trees and put in some buildings. I think there's an opportunity to save what's there and add to it so that there's a recognition of the existing amenities that are on the site. One other consideration I think that needs to be taken into account is the non-motorized activity that a 15-minute neighborhood is going to take into account, and whether it's mini bikes or pedestrians, and how is that accommodated relative to bike stands and charging stations and all the other things that make it friendly for the neighbors to actually utilize the site and not worry about concentrating it just for the folks that are going to be living there, but that goes beyond that. So those are my initial comments. So.
Additional thoughts? Mrs. Urbanowski.
Oh,
sorry.
you wanna
Go ahead, Mrs. Urbanowski.
I'm in agreement with everything that you just said, especially sort of, when we think about public or the community benefit, it doesn't necessarily just mean that community. So that's a wonderful idea, the charging stations and all of that. And I think that's where, and someone had questioned that, why the kayak addition would be something that they would talk about. That's an additional community benefit, and that's allowable. I mean, we're allowed to say whether or not we would accept something like that as a community benefit. It's not required. Most of the time when we see PUDs, it's the benefit that we're giving is that we're giving you a nature preserve, which, I mean, that's arguable sometimes, but this is a solid thing that they want to help do. So that's what that's all about. And then the other thing that I wanted to kind of mention, going back to the schools, and I had mentioned this at another meeting before, that I am very much concerned about public safety and our fire department and infrastructure and all of that. And I stay in contact with those departments and I ask questions. I did reach out, as Chris Barnett did, to Ben Kirby. And I asked him the question and I said, you know, what's the pain point? When are you going to freak out on us and say, stop building places? And I got the assurance from him that that they are well aware of everything that's going on, everything that's coming, and that they're planning for that. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that we also think about those things and ask in advance, because I do have kids here as well. I have a middle schooler at Walden, so I live off of Baldwin, so, you know, I totally understand it. The other thing was, I will never not think of it as the ladle now, which, that's amazing. But I do want to make sure that, you know, that we are considering all of those people that are surrounding. But I do want to say one positive thing. No, there's a lot of positive things, to be honest with you, because as you said, this really truly is like the first real kind of PUD that we've seen that is really true to what we were kind of thinking of when we're thinking of these kinds of things. I believe that Baldwin was built for something like this. The use, the density, and the design concept fits right in with the PUD idea. I appreciate that and I'll get it wrong, but the two westernmost bits, the closer to Peppermill and the cottages, have the feel or intend to feel more like the adjacent properties. And the same like towards Baldwin. So you're putting the multifamily towards Baldwin, you're bringing it away from, you know, the single family homes and the cottages and things like that. I think that was well thought out, and I appreciate the idea of that. So that goes to, in my eyes, the transition, right? So, you know, it's not like we didn't throw all, you know, multifamily apartments in the back and that type of thing. So I think that was really well thought out. I am concerned about the commercial part of it, especially because of the Chick-fil-A, that entrance there. I do think that will be an issue. And just for the record, I don't like the idea of another car wash. So I'm just gonna say it and get out of the way. I think we have too many, and, you know, if people are gonna be walking more, they don't need to wash their cars as much. So that's how I feel about that. Couple more things I wanted to say. Sorry, I have a lot of notes here. Transitional features, I wanted to talk about that. Will the PUD place an unreasonable burden upon the subject and or surrounding land or property owners and occupants potentially with that, I think, with the traffic from Chick-fil-A? Again, with the township master plan, we were talking about 15-minute neighborhoods. I want to see kids and families still continue to use those safety paths safely. I mean, that's the number one. Again, I live off of Baldwin, and I would really like to, you know, to continue to let my kids go down to Menchie's, like you said. So that's important. Just concerned about that. I like the fact that there's more open space than there than they needed to have. The density is right along the line of what it would be normally. And unified control, I do have to say, you know, I understand that Mosheri properties are well-maintained, and they have an excellent reputation. So I have no concerns with, you know, the idea that they would fall into disrepair. The last thing that I'm going to say is that we've been talking over and over about middle housing, and when I think about middle housing, I don't think in terms of a price. What I'm thinking about is that somebody in my neighborhood of Keatington, like maybe me, who's, most of my children are grown and gone, I don't need a 4-bedroom house anymore, but I might want to stay in Orion. This might be something that I can go to, and now I've opened up my 2,300 square foot home to somebody else who wants to buy it. I mean, that's just how I think about it. You know, people are moving from large homes and that they've raised their families in, but they want to stay in Orion, young professionals, empty nesters, that type of thing. I'm happy to see this plan, and I do think there is a lot of work, but I think it's right where it needs to be.
Thank you. Mr. St. Henry.
So during the applicant's presentation, he talked about our master plan, some of the goals and so forth in the master plan. And, you know, I helped write those goals, and, you know, a big focus of our attention has always been balancing development with maintaining the historic character of our community and the rural nature of our community. All of us here recognize that this piece of property has been primed for development for 20 years. For those of us that have lived here, it should be no surprise. I've lived here a long time, should be no surprise. There's no question in my mind that if this was built, whether it's here or wherever, a Mosheri product this is a well thought out development. It would be top notch. It would be very appealing. It does address some of what I think our housing option concerns are in our township. Now, I have a vision of middle market housing as being also affordable housing for young families and singles and so forth. I'm not quite sure if this would meet that criteria or not, if it truly being affordable, but that's up for discussion another time. You know, we've looked at a lot of these, we've looked at a number of townhouse apartment developments over the past year especially. We just looked at one not too far off Lapeer Road within the last few months. Another very nice development, would be appealing, probably would fill up. But, you know, and we look closely at the density, the infrastructure issues, drainage concerns. Most importantly, we looked at the traffic issues. And that being said, when I looked at this plan and I saw the massive size of this plan and where it's being proposed, and having lived here and watched Baldwin Road evolve over the last 40 years, I'm very concerned about the traffic concerns. Not just people going up and down Baldwin Road, but also those that live in the neighborhoods. And trying to be respectful to the existing residents that have been, some have been there 2 years, some have been there 20 years, some have been there 50 years. Traffic in that area is an issue. And development of this size, with the possibility of up to 1,000 cars, you know, adding to the traffic is concerning. You know, we've talked about this before. We are proponents of the right kind of development. It's got to be in the right locations in the township. I'm not convinced this is in the right location in the township. That being said, again, it's a very nice development, but to Mr. Walker's point, I felt exactly the same he did. I'm not sure if this belongs in Orion Township. To me, I envision this being in a location like a Troy or a Rochester, or perhaps a Northville or a Novi. It just doesn't seem to fit our character. Now, I'm not saying that changes couldn't be made. But it just feels like a little out of place. But my biggest issue with this development is the footprint. We talk about 15-minute neighborhoods. When Rod brought that concept to our attention when we were putting together the master plan, he likened 15-minute neighborhoods to hamlets. And to me, a 465-unit development is not a hamlet. That's just my personal opinion. I think the footprint is detrimental to that area from a traffic perspective, but more so because I'm concerned about the impact on the people that live there now, in these different neighborhoods or in this, around there, and what kind of impact that'll have on them. So, let me just wrap up by saying this proposal and what Mosherry's presenting has merit. I would like to give them the opportunity to listen to what we've had to say, what the community's had to say, and come back with some significant changes, if possible, to perhaps make that footprint not as drastic to this community, to this area. Because, when I look at this is almost like a new community within Orion Township. And I always envision when a community, when a builder comes in, he wants to complement what's around him. And I think that location, it's not compatible at this point. Perhaps it could be if it was configured differently, maybe perhaps a little smaller, I feel differently. But right now, this is just, the footprint is very problematic to me. Thank you.
Additional comments, questions? Mr. Bracken.
I'll keep mine short. I have a little bit of different opinion. This, in my opinion, is a place where I would want to live within Orion Township. I do see it within Orion Township. Although there's nothing like it in Orion Township, I think it would bring the level of Orion Township up significantly. The concerns that I do have, obviously, the traffic, massive problem. That has to, somehow, the engineers have to figure that out and has to get dealt with in a way that it doesn't seem it has yet. My second concern are the buffers and the setbacks to the existing houses that are there, and not as much so to the west and the Pulte subs that are new there, but to the south and to the north, so to the Ladle, but also on the southwest corner there's a whole subdivision there that you can't see on that I'm assuming was intentionally left off of that map, where there are 50-foot setbacks from those 7 duplexes that are in that corner there. It's 50 feet, that doesn't include a patio or a pool, like someone said. And the people living to the south there, in their R1 homes on 3/4 of an acre, have enjoyed woods and those kinds of things, and now they're going to have a pool within, 25, 50 feet of their house. So I think the buffers and the setbacks have to be analyzed if this is going to move forward to reduce the impact on the existing property owners, or that there's going to be a huge problem.
Mrs. Gingell.
Most of my notes have been said, but my concerns are a little bit different. I'm concerned about a road coming from the cottages into this development, because I can picture people coming out of Gregory Meadows into the cottages through there and creating a whole lot of traffic coming into those commercial buildings, just to avoid Baldwin and Road entirely. I think the grocery store, I don't have the feel of a neighborhood grocery store at 44,000 square feet. A Trader Joe's is 13 to 16, just to put it into perspective. A Whole Foods is 40. That's a huge grocery store, not a local neighborhood grocer. Chick-fil-A is going to cause a huge amount of trouble. I have teenagers, and I told them this was on here today, and they're super excited because they're kids and they want to go there, and we're all going to have to take them there. It's going to be busy. So that's concerning. The one-way exit there and just the way the boulevards are, I see huge safety concerns there as well. I wish it had more of a village feel on the Baldwin Road side, just to keep the character of the little town down there. The only thing I see as a village is the name. It's just commercial with some residential behind it, in my opinion. And then once you get past the commercial, you see huge apartment buildings. So I wish those were pushed back if they have to be there. Some more green space. I opened it and saw a bunch of concrete right off Baldwin Road. So if we could push it back, build up the buffers, I think we'd make it a little better. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Good segue to one of the points of discussion that I wanted to have. OHM's letter, one of their 4 concerns is the stub road from Gregory Meadows, the cottages at Gregory Meadows, to be clear. So is there further discussion on that? My personal opinion is I always like vehicular connections. I'm a big proponent of that. Obviously, the way this lays out and seeing that it's under unified control, the concern was more if that was always going to be a singular development piece. So I at least appreciate the pedestrian access component. So I think where I see some of this discussion going is I would like to get some thoughts on that specific comment because it's something specific in our engineer review. And then it sounds like if someone would be willing to make a motion, that then there could be some constructive conditions being put forth on the recommendation that we make here tonight. You know, some of these concerns of buffers and drainage and aesthetics and trees and things like that, I think are all good things to put within that motion to give some constructive feedback on, you know, why we feel the way we do, that we may be in support, but we want to still see these things improved. So that was a long-winded question, but let's circle back to, I guess, kind of the road pedestrian access versus vehicular. Mr. Bracken.
So I just want to be clear. My understanding is that the Peppermill Lane and the cottages, that there's a gate there now only accessible for emergency vehicles. So there would not be an opportunity in the new development to go to the cottages and then access Morgan Road that way.
As it's planned currently, no. What you see where kind of all the trees are in the current development, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Landis, but that's where the stub road originally was proposed in cottages at Gregory Meadow. So on what would be the top right corner of this proposed plan, there was the stub road with the cottages at Gregory Meadow proposed to that would potentially connect to this future development. So as of right now, it's only proposed as a pedestrian access way between the 2 parcels versus a vehicular access.
Okay.
I agree. Pedestrian.
Okay.
Pedestrian.
Support on pedestrian as a general comment? Okay. All right, well, I would suggest, if someone's willing to make a motion, then maybe we can at least just put that motion on the table. There'll be the opportunity for public discussion of the motion. And like I said, I would recommend there maybe be some conditions put forth on the recommendation of just some of the direction, feedback that we'd like to see improvements on.
I'll make a motion, but before that.
Go ahead. And if there's comment prior, feel free.
One thing I forgot to mention is that the car wash that's proposed just doesn't seem like it really fits in this environment, or this type of development, this environment. That's my own personal reaction to the project, is that the car wash, it just doesn't seem to fit.
And I would say that if the car wash project is scrapped, a mattress store also doesn't fit. Personal opinion.
Good point.
Well,
What I would like to see there in the commercial set portion of this would be professional services like doctor's office, dentist's office, other medical facility. I mean, if this is truly a village, a self-contained village of sorts, something like that seems to make more sense to me than a car wash. And I think that the development where we're referring to the mattress store, I think that was purposely building designed that way so it can be a lot of different things. But I would like to see professional building of sort in this development.
All right, well, if someone is willing to make a motion, I think that's a good place to continue our discussion.
I would move that the Planning Commission forwards a recommendation of the Township Board to approve PC 2229 Baldwin Village PUD Concept and Eligibility Plan located at 4410 and 4408 South Baldwin, parcel 0932301001, and an unaddressed parcel 0932301014 located at the northwest corner of Morgan and South Baldwin Roads, an unaddressed parcel 0932151020 located north of 44008 South Baldwin, and 4292 South Baldwin, parcel 0932151021 for the preliminary plans, date stamped July 7th, 2022. This recommendation to approve is based upon the fact that this is for concept only, that further plans would be detailed at a later date under final plan review, but that the applicant has met the following eligibility criteria of section 30.03B of the Township zoning ordinance and has met the intent of the PUD as stated in 30.03A of the Township zoning ordinance, being one, a recognizable benefit. The PUD will result in a substantial benefit to the ultimate users of the project and the community. It embraces the Gangleville Overlay District and the 15-minute neighborhood plan, which is addressed in our latest master plan. And it provides for a single unified development on 60 acres of property versus several unrelated developments. Two, the density impact will result in a material increase in the use of public service facilities and utilities in relation to what would be permitted if the property were developed without using the PUD, and is consistent and complies with the Angleville Overlay District. C, the request is consistent with the master plan in the area, as well as the overlay district and the 15-minute neighborhood concept. And D, the economic impact of the PUD will not result in an unreasonable negative economic impact upon the surrounding properties in relation to the economic impact that would occur from a more traditional development. The guaranteed open space contains open space which is required in the ordinance and will provide a nature preserve and park available for the community located within the project. And this is a proposed unified PUD under single ownership. There's a single person or entity having responsibility for completing the project with this ordinance. This recommendation for approval is based upon the conditions of one, the traffic be analyzed in detail relative to the project, both from a vehicular as well as pedestrian traffic circulation system. Two, that there be a tree survey provided, which will identify the border landscaping, the border existing foliage that can be retained as a screen and setback and border for the adjoining residential properties. That there be a phasing identified for the project, which will identify which projects would be provided in the various phases. That the project looked at non-motorized accommodation on the development or such things as bike paths, bike racks, charging stations, and the like. Who else wants to add some conditions?
Let's start with that. Can I get support the motion on the table?
Support.
Support by Mrs. Urbanowski. Great start, big project. So a couple other comments, I think just clarifications is I would say we would want to make sure we're meeting the criteria of 2 through 4 of OHM's review, which referred to reviewing the traffic study. 3 was the infiltration measures, and 4 was the ingress of traffic for review. 1 was, I am not adding that in because it was in reference to the vehicular access to cottages at Gregory Meadow. So that would be 1 amendment, or proposed amendment, should I say.
The July 27th report from OHM.
Correct. So I guess if we want to start there, do you support that and support your?
I amend my support, yes.
Okay, thank you. Couple other items that were brought up previously. So you had mentioned pedestrian amenities, trees were mentioned, traffic was discussed. The discussion of avoiding future buffer waivers was 1 comment. I know we're discussing trees, but I think that's a point of clarification that there was some point of concern of the amount of buffers, especially to the north and south. And then the other comment was some of the commercial aesthetic, being aware of essentially the Gingellville standards and essentially their frontage along Baldwin Road. And then 3 was the concern of drainage and flooding on the site. And I think that is somewhat addressed in item number 3, but it is a point of condition, I think, just from the Planning Commission. So to be clear, in addition to the previously amendment, it would be looking at the buffers adjacent to commercial properties, specifically on the north and south sides, addressing the commercial aesthetic and the flat roofs as it relates to the Gingellville overlay standards and their presence along Baldwin corridor, and then 3, the drainage and flooding concerns as the proposed property may or may not create. So that would be my proposed amendment.
Even during the construction process about the drainage and flooding, because I think that's a huge concern. Ultimately, this may be perfect, as far as drainage and flooding in the end, but during the construction and the moving of the earth, there's going to be a problem potentially, and I think the one person brought up the escrow where, put something in there to protect the people, whereas if their whole basement gets flooded, there's an escrow account or an insurance policy or something where they don't have to go through litigation to get their basement fixed.
So I guess, Mr. Landis, can you elaborate on that? Is the new Oakland County standards speak to, I guess, groundwater or anything like that, and how it might change with the proposed development, and our concern is how it might influence outside this property borders?
So the recently adopted county standards basically strive to kind of promote some more infiltration, kind of keep some more of the stormwater runoff on site as opposed to collecting it and then sending it downstream. There's a requirement for the developer to provide some infiltration tests to look at the soils to see if they are in fact pervious. There's certain rates that they have to meet. So if those are met, then they can do the infiltration. If they aren't, then there's a requirement to try to implement some other, best management practices on site. So I can, assure you that we will make sure that the development adheres to the new stormwater standards. With respect to construction, just to make sure that you understand, obviously the developer is responsible for the design of the project. The township and its consultants, ourselves, would review it to make sure it's in compliance with those standards. And then it's up to the developer to manage his construction. We are not out there all the time when they are grading the site. They have their own construction crews. They have their own stormwater operator who's responsible to control runoff from the site and maintain their soil erosion measures. The incident that happened that was mentioned at Pepper Mill, was a result of the developer's failure to maintain their measures and resulted in off-site impacts. And as I understand it, there was a settlement reached between the two parties. So it's unfortunate, but it, it's been resolved. As far as the escrow is concerned, that typically is not set aside for such damages. The escrow is, well, there's several guarantees that a developer has to post. One is a performance guarantee, which is usually 50% of the engineer's estimate of site improvements on for the development. And that is in place for the township's use in the event that the economy crashes, developer walks, or other unforeseen issues where you have possibly residents living in a half-developed site where the township might have to hire contractors to come in, button up underground utilities, make access, et cetera. The other escrow is set aside to cover site inspections. Some inspection is full-time, mostly for utilities that the township's going to take over and own and maintain, such as water and sewer. Other inspections are more, part-time check-ins. So they're not typically set aside for, potential damages to off-site residents.
Thank you for that.
Answers the question.
Mr. Bracken, is there additional questions, I guess?
No, I was just hoping that perhaps the applicants think about that as part of their next proposal and maybe including it as part of it in contemplation of that issue.
Understood. So there was a suggested amendment regarding the buffers, the general discussion against drainage and flooding, and essentially that would be met by meeting our engineer standards as recently adopted, and then also the commercial aesthetic along Baldwin Road. So I guess that would be one that I would ask if the motion maker is willing to make that amendment.
I would make the amendment that an additional amendment that there be compliance with the Gingellville design, architectural and design standards of the ordinance.
Okay.
I'd amend my support.
I'm not interested in the others.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, what was that last? And he what the others?
Wasn't interested in the others.
Thank you.
I personally think the buffers need to be looked at. I think that's one item that we need to discuss.
Well, I thought he was being more specific.
Did you address?
Yeah, extensive border landscape.
Okay, I'm sorry. So then I double repeated what we had spoken to earlier then. So buffers are included along with commercial aesthetic. Okay, thank you. And the support was amended. Additional items to add as a condition of the motion. Okay, at this point in time, there is a motion support on the table that allows the opportunity for both the applicant and the public to weigh in on the motion that's on the table. If the, oh, I'm sorry.
Can I just get one
Yes.
item clarification?
Yep.
The motion is to recommend approval, and all these conditions are your condition of what will be in the plan when they come for final?
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure that that was the intent of the motion. That did not need to be incorporated into concept.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure, thank you.
If, sorry, go ahead.
Dominic Mosheri, 3215 Silver Bell. Thank you for your comments and concerns. I'm going to first address the perimeter. There's concerns with the buffer, and our setback is our setback, and our decks, because the way the building's jogging it out, they're mostly recessed in. Along the west property line where the duets are, those will all be at grade. There's no elevated decks there at all. And there's no pools, structures, invisible fences, jungle gyms, nothing like that. So between the buffers between the existing neighborhoods and what we're proposing with our north and south village, there are no additional structures. And there's no clearing that would be, because of their slab on a grade function, the clearing limits would typically be no more than 12 feet beyond the building envelope. We're not excavating basements, so it's not to the same extreme as it would be a single-family subdivision with full basements. Mr. Walker brought something up, that the look and feel. And we're looking at a flat aerial plan. And can I have the pointer, please? So we took this into great consideration.
Mr. Mosheri, will you just do me a benefit and
Thank you.
make sure you talk to the
Yes,
mic?
thank you.
Just so we can have you on record.
So we took in great consideration to reduce the bulk and the heaviness of, what we call the car pollution and parking pollution. And we split the building in half. And these are garages, and that's parking behind the garages. But these buildings all have garages that are at the ends of them. So also at human scale, if we pull our renderings up, Mr. Epnick, if you could pull the renderings up for a moment, manipulate this. You're seeing an aerial, a bird's eye view. This is one thing that I've struggled with our team on. I said, I'm sick and tired of bird's eye view because we're not a giraffe. And we're looking at something from a giraffe's perspective. And we got to look at it from human scale, from where you are in your vehicle, which you're below the grade, the height of the road coming up, and this gets to the uncomfortableness and what we want to do to bring the scale down. We're not seeing 3 floors of these apartment buildings, and I'm going to call these apartment buildings because we're trying to provide housing types and options for different affordability levels, call that middle market. So here's a good example. If you keep the screen on.
Did we lose it? Let's try that.
Okay.
There we go.
So this presents it's beautiful, but you know what? I don't like it because I'm not going to ever be that tall on a crane looking at the view. We're going to be at this young lady with the carriage. What's that perspective? We need to provide this to you. It might be some colors. I'm going to be very candid with you. Something we struggled with. And we can lighten some colors up in the next iterations and give options to this. And so the dark contrasts might be, it's something new to us. My taste level is, I like French Nouveau architecture, but that's not Gingivil's either. My children think that my taste is in architecture stodgy. They think this is fantastic and it's Icelandic, all these different terms. But what I'm trying to say here is that we're not looking at it from human scale, and that's part of the problem. We need to do a better job. And we promise to do that and bring that to you. So bring me another example, if we could, where, if you go to the site plan, if you could, back where we just were. And this goes into, we're looking at a flat plan, and it looks like it's a sea of here we go. We need to pull that up again. Thank you. And so we can put stronger trees along this line. Now, this cut has to be open because that's how you enter into the parking area. But if you get the human scale, you're only going to see one floor, because this is a berm and landscaping, and then we have the trellis here. It's going to block all this parking. But right now, from a flat plan, it's hard to see that at first glance. And we could go the same thing here and everywhere else. And this is so far set back, several hundred feet. This might be, 500 feet back. And with the fountains and the trees, again, you may only see the one story of this building. The clubhouse, and what we try to do is set the amenity reflecting upon the pond. Again, we were very cognizant in the delicate nature of reducing the bulk of these, but we put all half buildings along the boulevard and along Baldwin Road. It was very intentionally done. And so we need to better demonstrate this in the next iteration. And we do appreciate your comments, Mr. Walker. I do understand it is different, and trying to balance with the roundabout, the traffic flow, and create the different village concepts, to create that hamlet. And we all think of hamlets of something in smaller size, as Mr. St. Henry had stated, and the hamlets typically 50 to 100 housing units max. So we tried to create, we created these hamlets or neighborhoods within the greater neighborhood. And we just need to do a better job demonstrating this in here, because it seems harsh on a flat plan. But when you get the human scale, and when you have, trees that are getting planted at 12 foot tall, and then they mature to 18 feet tall, it softens everything. I cannot speak to the center itself. Our associates will speak to those aesthetics and those uses and the changes there. But one thing that we were very diligent on was connecting the entire frontage along Baldwin with this common trellis work and landscape, so there's a connectivity here. And then the unified control as far as the landscape architecture and architectural control. But we thank you for your comments, but I did want to iterate that we think these buffers are rather significant. We appreciate that you concur with that the vehicular traffic. We do not want it. The fire department does concur, and they have reviewed the plan, and the public safety and health, they are satisfied with the dynamics and the connectivity that we have. As to the Shalom Baptist Church, they own property here, and of course here. I do need some help due to my ignorance. Right in this corner, what exists in this corner? Because I think that's something we need to look at.
It's a baseball diamond.
It's a baseball diamond, okay, owned by Shalom Baptist?
You're right, there's homes to the north.
Right here. So if I get there, so the Peppermill Court ends here. This is why, this is the last location by where we have a duet. So Peppermill Court ends, and terminus is at this point, right here. That's for certain. I just was ignorant to what is in here. As aerial would help, photo would help. So I just wanted to make those points. Oftentimes, we try to bring a architectural flavor and difference and not be so monotonous, but we are open to colors. It might be that stark contrast and that dark roof, and we could lighten those type of things up in the next iteration and provide some choices. But thank you for your comments, and it'll get better. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just one item to clarify, I think a lot of the buffers are the concerns of the property adjacent to existing uses. And I think some of the main comments of buffers are the potential for future waivers, I guess I'm hungry at 11 o'clock at night, is some of the distances as they relate to commercial uses. So just to clarify for future sake, but in the interest of time, I would like to be able to provide some opportunity if there's any public comment on the motion. If you could go ahead, state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Aaron Wolf, 4453 Peppermill Lane. I just wanted to be clarified when you guys were saying about the amendment of the buffers, if it could be for all of them, not just the north and south, because there are just the 50 feet. For the other adjacent. But I also wanted to say, I mean, I really am glad that it's Mosheri of helping with this, and I have to say, and thank you to her, earlier this week, she said, you know what, reach out to the builders, and I was like, Mr. Walker, but after, I mean, Mr. Mosheri, sorry if I pronounce it wrong, but he even reassured that some of those homes were going to be the colors of our natural habitat for the buffers, like as an addition to the buffers. So, but I just wanted to make sure of that amendment, it was a buffer for all the way around. So,
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment on the motion? Okay, seeing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Urbanowski.
Yes.
Gross.
Yes.
St. Henry.
No.
Walker.
Yes.
Bracken.
Yes.
Angel.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's patience this evening. We do have a few other agenda items, so if you are going to take off, please just do so quietly, please, so we can get through the rest of it and we can get home too. Thank you. We have no unfinished business this evening. Is there any public comments? Seeing everyone racing towards the door, not towards the podium, I'm going to take that as a no. Communications, we did receive a couple additional letters regarding the master plan, one of similar comments of opposition that we've received in the past, another that was in support of our work, thanking us for our thoughtfulness in 15-minute neighborhoods. So in a sea of negativity, it's nice to see someone appreciates the forethought and year and a half worth of thinking. This evening, we have no planner report in education, no committee reports. We do have a future public hearing later this month on the 17th at 7:05 for PC case 22-31 for 1112 and 11 through 1128 Lapeer Road rezone. Request is to rezone 1112, 1116, 1120, 1124, 1128, and 1132 of South Lapeer Road, parcel 0914201005 from restricted business RB to general business. That leads to number 14, which would be chairman's comments. Thank you everyone from the public for coming out tonight. I do respect everyone's thoughts and opinions and do appreciate you coming out, especially in a respectful manner, even though it's a late evening. We had a couple of big projects and it is nice for people to come out. My other comment would be to my fellow planning commissioners to encourage you to make some motions and ask some questions. With that said, I will turn over to Mrs. Gingell for her thoughts.
No comment.
Mr. Walker.
Nothing for me.
Mr. St. Henry.
I'm good.
Mr. Gross.
Nothing.
Mrs. Urbanowski. Mr. Bracken.
Nothing.
Ms. Gerling. Awesome. All right, with that said, I would make a motion to adjourn at 10:51 in support. Do I have support?
Support.
Support by Mrs. Urbanowski. All those in favor, please stay with aye. Aye. Motion carries.